So, what if everything you were taught about money by your hardworking, highly educated parents is, well, exactly what's keeping you from becoming wealthy?
I mean, it is a profoundly unsettling premise
Yeah, totally.
because we were conditioned from birth to believe that following a traditional, respectable path, you know, getting degrees, finding a stable corporation, climbing the ladder, is the ultimate safety net.
Right. The American dream, basically.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
to suggest that that very safety net is actually a ceiling on your potential, that requires a complete rewiring of how we view the world.
It really does. And welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are exploring a text that completely shatters that illusion, the illusion that good grades automatically equal financial freedom.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We are going to unpack how wealth is less about your paycheck and, well, more about your programming, and why understanding this divergence is the absolute first step for anyone interested in taking control of their financial future.
Because to even begin talking about balance sheets or investments, we really have to examine the psychological bedrock those things are built on.
Right.
And the source material sets this up by introducing us to two distinctly different father figures in a young boy's life.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So one is a highly educated academic who constantly struggled with money, and the other is an 8th grade dropout who actually went on to become one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii.
Which is just wild to think about, but it, we have to start at the root of this divergence, I think. Like, if we are operating on flawed financial programming, where does that software even come from?
Well, the core argument here is that money is simply not a subject taught in traditional schools.
Right. You learn math, history.
Exactly, but not money.
Huh.
Our educational systems were essentially designed during the industrial age to produce functional, compliant components for an economy.
Like good workers.
Right. They focus almost exclusively on scholastic and professional skills. They train you to be a competent employee, an excellent doctor, a reliable accountant. And because of that massive blind spot in the curriculum, our financial programming is inherited almost entirely by default from our parents.
See, I am struggling with that a bit, though.
How so?
Because my whole life, I've been told that a PhD or, a medical degree or a law degree is the ultimate financial safety net.
Sure, that's the standard script.
Right. So if that's not true, what are these highly educated people actually getting wrong if they are pulling in, I don't know, $200,000 or $300,000 a year?
It really comes down to the difference between earning money and understanding how money works.
Okay, unpack that.
So, traditional education prepares you to exist within a system where you trade your time for a salary. The highly educated father in this text was incredibly intelligent, but his education taught him to seek safety and avoid financial risks entirely.
Oh, okay.
Because he lacked formal financial education, he passed down the only survival strategy he knew, which was to get a secure job with good benefits.
Right, the whole pension and sick leave thing.
Exactly. But relying entirely on an employer for your financial survival without understanding how to make money work for you is actually a position of immense vulnerability.
So it's perfectly possible to have brilliant, highly educated professionals who earn exceptional incomes, but who still struggle financially their entire lives.
Yes.
Just because they're running obsolete software.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. They have mastered their professional skills, but their financial skills are limited to whatever was discussed, or frankly, what was nervously avoided at the dinner table growing up.
Wow. It is so much like trying to learn a language.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like if you grow up in a household where the only dialect spoken is the language of the employee, you will naturally adopt that vocabulary.
Right. You'll speak fluently about job security, retirement matches, saving a little from each paycheck.
Exactly. But you will be completely illiterate in the language of the investor. You won't know how to speak about cash flow, leveraging assets, or return on investment simply because you just never heard it spoken.
Which means you can graduate from a top-tier university, just like the educated father did, but still be navigating the world with a poor person's financial programming.
So, for everyone listening, think about your own baseline beliefs about money for a second. If you ever feel a constant hum of anxiety about your finances,
Which so many people do.
yeah, or if you feel like you are always swimming against the current despite working hard, it might simply be that default programming you inherited.
Exactly.
It is not necessarily a reflection of your work ethic or your intelligence. It is just the software you were handed.
And recognizing that it is just inherited programming is the crucial first step, because once you see the code, you can actually start the process of rewriting it.
Right. And that leads directly to how this programming physically manifests in our daily lives. According to the text, the clearest indicator of your underlying financial software is the language you use every single day.
Yeah, the words we choose to speak don't just reflect our reality. They actively construct it.
There's a really vivid scenario in the text that illustrates this perfectly. Both fathers faced the exact same problem, which was a lack of funds for something they wanted.
Right. A very common problem.
Yeah. And the highly educated but financially struggling father would look at the price tag and say, I can't afford it. End of discussion.
Just shut it down completely.
Completely. But the wealthy father, the 8th grade dropout, completely banned that phrase from his house. He insisted that the boy instead ask the question, how can I afford it?
Notice the structural difference between those two sentences. I can't afford it is a statement. How can I afford it is a question.
Yeah, it forces a different reaction.
Exactly. The text uses the analogy of physical exercise to explain why this linguistic shift is so powerful. Saying, I can't afford it, lets your brain off the hook.
It's a sign of mental laziness.
It really is. The moment those words leave your mouth, your brain literally powers down regarding that problem. It accepts defeat and just goes to sleep.
It is exactly like walking into a gym, looking at a heavy barbell, saying, I can't lift that, and then walking right out the door to sit in your car.
Yes. You haven't engaged a single muscle.
But asking, how can I afford it, forces the brain to boot up.
Right. The wealthy father believed that the brain is the world's most powerful computer. And just as going to the gym increases your chances for physical longevity, exercising your mind increases your chances for wealth.
So forcing yourself to answer that question makes your mental computer stronger.
Every single time.
Let's break down how that actually looks in practice. If you see a car you want and you say, I can't afford it, you feel a moment of sadness and then you move on.
Right.
But if you ask, how can I afford it? What happens mechanically in your head?
Well, your brain immediately starts hunting for solutions. It asks, could I start a freelance project on the weekends? Could I negotiate a better rate at my current job?
Or maybe buy a smaller cash-flowing asset that generates enough monthly income to cover the car payment.
Exactly. Even if you ultimately decide not to buy the car, you have forced your brain to do the mental reps.
Which is the whole point. The point isn't to blindly buy everything you want or to engage in irresponsible consumer debt.
No, definitely not.
The point is to be fanatical about the mental exercise. Passive acceptance is the enemy of financial growth.
Because the wealthy father wasn't advocating for materialism at all, he was advocating for cognitive endurance.
So the next time you look at a price tag and feel that familiar sinking feeling, catch yourself. Treat the phrase, I can't afford it, like a toxic substance.
That's a great rule of thumb.
Swap it out for how can I afford it, and watch how it immediately shifts your mind from a passive victim of your bank account into an active problem solver.
And if you practice that mental gym routine long enough, those daily shifts in language inevitably compound into entirely different life choices.
Which brings us to the starkly contrasting career philosophies of these two men.
Right, because the words they used built the worldviews they inhabited, especially regarding their views on risk, assets, and entitlement.
Let's talk about the educated father first. He advised the young boy to study hard so he could find a good company to work for.
Yes, he valued job protection, government tenure, and safe benefits. Pensions, sick leave.
He believed that after years of hard work, a person was entitled to those benefits.
Right, he was the ultimate institutional man. But contrast that with the wealthy father. His advice was to study hard so you could find a good company to buy.
To buy? That's such a flip.
It is. He advocated for total financial self-reliance, and he strongly warned that an entitlement mentality actually creates weak, financially needy individuals.
That is a total reversal of the standard American dream script.
Okay.
And this brings us to a major point of tension in the text, one that I think will challenge a lot of assumptions.
The housing debate.
Yes, the debate over housing. The educated father believed their family home was their largest investment and greatest asset.
Which is what most people are taught.
Right. But the wealthy father believed a house is a liability, and if your primary residence is your biggest investment, you are in a very precarious position.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
So how does he justify that?
Well, to understand how the wealthy father could make such a counterintuitive claim, we have to define what an asset and a liability actually are within this specific framework.
Okay, breakdown.
So traditional accounting might look at a house, see that it has a high market value, and place it in the asset column.
Because you could theoretically sell it.
Right. But the philosophy presented here defines these terms purely by cash flow.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't matter what a spreadsheet says it's worth. It matters what it does to your wallet on a Tuesday.
Exactly. In this book, an asset is strictly something that puts money into your pocket every month, whether you're working or not.
And a liability.
A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket every month.
Okay, so by that definition, a primary residence requires you to pay the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, the landscaping, and, fix the roof when it leaks.
Yeah, it is consistently bleeding cash out of your pocket.
Therefore, in this framework, it functions as a liability.
Correct. And look, the wealthy father wasn't against owning homes, but he understood the fundamental mechanics of where the cash was actually flowing.
Right.
The educated father's worldview was built entirely on avoiding risk, and a house felt like a safe harbor.
But the wealthy father's worldview was built on managing risk by accumulating things that actually generate cash.
That distinction between avoiding risk and managing risk shows up everywhere in their lives.
Give me another example.
Well, take paying bills. They were both responsible men who paid their bills on time. But the struggling father paid his bills first and saved whatever was left over.
Which is standard advice.
Right. But the wealthy father paid himself first and paid his bills last.
See, which is another concept that sounds dangerously counterintuitive.
It does.
Honestly, it sounds incredibly irresponsible. Like, if your bank account is empty because you invested your money into an asset first, and now the electric bill is due and the mortgage is due, aren't you just asking for financial ruin?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah. How does creating that kind of pressure actually help you?
Well, let's look at the mechanism of that pressure. When the educated father paid his bills first, he often had absolutely nothing left over for himself.
Right, his cup was empty.
Exactly. He felt no pressure because the creditors were satisfied, but his wealth never grew. When the wealthy father paid himself first, putting money into investments, he artificially created a massive deficit to pay his creditors.
So the pressure is the point.
The pressure is the catalyst.
Yeah.
By having the tax man and the creditors knocking on the door, he forced his financial genius to wake up.
He had to figure out how to generate more income.
Exactly. The pressure forced him to negotiate better deals, start side businesses, or find creative financing.
So he used the fear of the creditors as motivation to expand his means.
Yes. Whereas the educated father used the fear of the creditors as motivation to live below his means.
Oh, wow. It is the literal difference between playing the game to win versus playing the game not to lose.
Precisely.
Are you spending your energy writing a resume to get a job, or are you spending it writing a business plan to create jobs?
Right. Are you organizing your life to avoid risk entirely, or are you actively learning the mechanics of managing it?
That's a huge mindset shift. And choosing to manage risk rather than hide from it requires immense psychological resilience.
It does. And the text makes it incredibly clear that these differing views on risk and career ultimately solidify into something much deeper than just habits.
They solidify into identity.
Yes.
The text points out that people literally shape their realities through their thoughts.
Because the psychological toll of risk management forces you to decide who you fundamentally are.
And the financially struggling father frequently prophesied his own reality. He would say things like, "I'll never be rich," or "I'm not interested in money," or "money doesn't matter."
And those prophecies came true for him.
He did, but the wealthy father always referred to himself as a rich man. He would openly declare that money is power.
And the resilience of that identity is what's truly fascinating here.
Yeah, the text shares a specific detail about a time when the wealthy father experienced a massive financial setback, right?
Yes, a setback that left him completely, absolutely flat broke.
But even in the depths of that ruin, he still referred to himself as a rich man.
He refused to let a temporary bank balance dictate his permanent identity.
Which is incredible.
It is. He provided a crucial distinction to explain this mindset to the young boy. He told him there is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary. Poor is eternal.
Broke is temporary. Poor is eternal. Let's unpack the mechanics of that, because it sounds like a motivational poster, but it's actually a survival strategy.
Think about a professional athlete who suffers a severe injury.
Okay.
They can't run, they can't compete, they might literally be in a wheelchair for months.
Right.
But they don't stop identifying as an athlete.
Right.
They view their current physical state as a temporary obstacle to overcome through rehab. They don't just say, well, I guess I'm a couch potato now.
They separate their temporary physical condition from their permanent identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the boy in the text realized that his biological father wasn't struggling because of a lack of income.
Because the text is very clear that the educated father actually earned a substantial salary.
Yes, he made good money.
He wasn't poor because the checks weren't clearing.
No, he was poor because of his thoughts and his actions. His identity was rooted in scarcity, fear, and the avoidance of risk, regardless of how much money actually flowed through his hands.
So if you handed him $1 million, his fundamental programming would still dictate how he managed it.
Right, he would likely just seek safety over growth.
Which means the moment you accept poor as your identity, your brain stops looking for the solutions that will move you out of the broke phase.
Exactly. You accept it as an eternal state of being, just like saying, I can't afford it.
Wow. Identifying as poor shuts down the cognitive machinery required to build wealth.
But identifying as temporarily broke keeps the machinery running, constantly searching for the next opportunity.
That is so powerful. Audit your own internal monologue, listeners. Listen to the words you say to yourself about money in the quiet moments.
It's so important to do that.
You must ruthlessly separate your current financial situation from your identity. You might have a setback, a terrible quarter, a failed venture, or a layoff. You might be broke today.
Yeah, happens to the best of us.
But you must never let that condition become your permanent identity.
Absolutely. And if we synthesize all these contrasting ideas, the inherited programming, the power of questions over statements, the true definition of an asset, and the psychology of identity, there's really one vital insight that serves as the soul of this material.
It all comes down to a conscious choice.
Yes, the boy's unique advantage wasn't that he was born into money, because he wasn't. His advantage was that he had two father figures feeding him completely contradictory advice.
Right. Because he was receiving opposing worldviews from two men he loved and respected, he couldn't just blindly accept the default programming.
He was forced to weigh the outcomes. He had to compare the reality of the highly educated man struggling to pay bills against the reality of the dropout building an empire.
He had to actually think for himself.
And the text emphasizes that positive thinking alone does not work. You cannot just manifest wealth by repeating affirmations while lacking financial literacy.
Right. You need the actual skills.
Wealth requires active education. It is not just a spreadsheet, and it is not just a high-paying salary. True wealth is a carefully, consciously chosen worldview.
And at just 9 years old, the author made his choice. He consciously chose to listen to the wealthy father.
He did.
He diverged from the safe, respectable, highly praised path of his biological father.
It is a choice the text beautifully underscores by referencing Robert Frost's famous poem, The Road Not Taken.
Oh, I love that one. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Taking the road less traveled in finance means rejecting the comforting default programming of job security.
It means doing the uncomfortable mental reps to figure out how to afford things.
It means learning the mechanics of cash flow to manage risk rather than just hiding from it.
It means guarding your identity against the permanence of a poor mindset.
Exactly. It requires you to wake up and finally take control of the software running your life.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We've unpacked the foundational mindsets that dictate our financial lives and the crucial choice between the employee's worldview and the investor's worldview.
It's a lot to process, but it's step one.
It really is. But now that we've chosen to view the world through the eyes of the wealthy, you have to ask yourself, how exactly do the rich spend their days if, as this philosophy claims, they absolutely refuse to work for money?
What if the exact thing you were always taught to do to get ahead financially, working hard, getting a degree, earning a pay raise, what if that's actually the ultimate trap keeping you broke?
Oh, man. That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. Because, personal finance is so often treated like this straightforward math test. You're
Go ahead.
told, just plug in the numbers, save your 10%, put it in a 401k, and eventually, you get an A. You get to retire.
Yeah, the classic script.
Exactly. But it's not a math test at all. It's really more like a game of chess. But half the board is completely hidden in the shadows. You're taught by literally everyone around you to just keep moving your pawns forward, working harder, taking on more hours, aiming for that promotion without ever realizing that the board is entirely tilted against you from the very start.
And honestly, the most insidious part of it all is that the opponent in this game isn't necessarily the economy or the government or even your boss. The opponent is your own psychological conditioning.
Wow.
We all just accept this conventional wisdom that trading our time for a paycheck is the only safe, responsible way to survive. But that widely accepted truth is often the exact mechanism that's causing chronic financial pain. So, today we're doing a deep dive into the foundational lesson from Robert Kiyosaki's classic wealth building book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right. Specifically, Chapter 1.
Yes, we're going to completely dissect this first major principle, why the wealthy absolutely refuse to work for money, and why mastering this very specific mental shift is basically the critical first step for anyone trying to build an actual business, launch a venture, or, just escape the paycheck to paycheck cycle.
Because this isn't just some casual conversation about where to park your investments or what stock to buy. This is about completely deconstructing our relationship with work, with our own anxiety, and with fear.
Absolutely.
We're going to look at how we've all been conditioned to trade our precious time for a totally false sense of security. And I think to truly understand the genesis of this mindset, we have to look at the unique environment where this whole philosophy was born.
Yeah, we have to go back in time a bit.
Right. We are going back to Hawaii in the year 1956. Picture this 9-year-old boy growing up in a sugar plantation town, and he finds himself caught in this agonizing psychological tug of war.
A total clash of worldviews.
Exactly. He has two very strong, very charismatic father figures in his life, and they are feeding him completely opposite maps of how the real world works.
And that contrast between these two men, that is the engine that drives this entire philosophy. So on one hand, you have his biological father. This is a man who is highly educated and fiercely intelligent. He completed a 4-year undergraduate degree in less than 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
Yeah. He went to Stanford, the University of Chicago, Northwestern, and all on full financial scholarships.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Brilliant. He eventually becomes the head of education for the state of Hawaii. So this man completely embodies the academic and societal ideal of success. He is the poor dad of the story. Although, and this is a really important caveat, at the time he actually earned a very substantial income.
Right. I think people get confused by the title. He was making really good money. He wasn't living in poverty by any stretch of the imagination. He had this prestigious government job, incredible benefits, a pension lined up, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, yeah, by all traditional metrics, he was crushing it.
But despite all that incoming cash flow, he constantly struggled with money. He always had a mountain of bills to pay, and he lived under this constant ambient cloud of financial strain. And then on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have the other father figure. This is the father of his best friend, Mike.
The rich dad.
The rich dad. And this man never even finished the 8th grade.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. He didn't have the academic pedigree. He didn't have the Ivy League scholarships or the cozy government pension.
But what he did have was a completely different operating system for reality. See, both men were incredibly hard workers, and both actually believed deeply in the power of education. But they disagreed on a fundamental level about what kind of education actually mattered in the real world.
All right, the curriculum was different.
Exactly. The biological father pushed for scholastic and professional skills. His advice was, get a degree, become a highly specialized professional, find a safe, secure job with a massive corporation or the government, and above all, make sure that job has excellent medical benefits.
The classic American dream script.
Spot on. But the rich dad, the 8th grade dropout, he encouraged studying how money itself works. He believed in learning how to make money work for you, rather than you just grinding away working for it. He was out there actively building an empire of warehouses, construction companies, restaurants.
Doing the actual thing.
Yes. And he ultimately became one of the richest men in Hawaii, leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family and to charities, while the highly educated poor dad, unfortunately, left behind a legacy of unpaid bills.
It's just a wild dichotomy for a 9-year-old brain to process. Imagine you're sitting at your own dinner table and your real dad, the man you deeply love and respect, is looking at you and telling you, the love of money is the root of all evil. And then the very next afternoon, you go hang out at your best friend's house, and his dad is telling you, no, the lack of money is the root of all evil. Like, how does a kid even figure out who to listen to?
It's basically impossible.
Both men are successful in their own arenas. Both are authoritative figures. Both are telling you the absolute truth about how the world works, but their truths are completely inverted.
It creates a state of profound cognitive dissonance. And from a developmental psychology standpoint, this is actually an incredible gift for a kid, even if it was super painful at the time.
A gift. How so?
Well, think about it. If he had only one father figure, he would have simply absorbed that single point of view through osmosis. It would have just been the invisible water he swam in, right?
Oh, sure. I wouldn't even know to question it.
Exactly. But having two compelling voices saying literally the exact opposite things, it forced this young boy to do something most adults never actually do. He had to stop, detach his emotions, compare the thoughts objectively, and actually choose for himself. He spent hours reflecting, asking himself, why does my biological dad say this? And then he had to apply that same rigorous, almost scientific questioning to the other father's statements.
The author actually compares this internal conflict to Robert Frost's famous poem, The Road Not Taken. And I think that really highlights the psychological weight of the decision. Choosing not to follow his highly educated biological dad's advice, that wasn't just a career pivot for a kid, it felt like a betrayal.
Oh, absolutely.
It goes against every biological instinct to reject the survival strategy your own parents are trying to hand you. But it was the road less traveled. He chose the path of the 8th grade dropout over the path of the Stanford-educated academic. And that single choice set the trajectory for everything that followed.
And when we pull back and look at the macroeconomic context here, it forces a really uncomfortable question for anyone listening today. Whose financial voice are you listening to in your own head?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because most of our financial programming comes directly from our parents or the socioeconomic environment we grew up in. And if our parents weren't financially literate, which let's be honest, most aren't, simply because the mechanics of money are deliberately left out of the traditional school curriculum.
Right, they don't teach this stuff in high school.
They really don't. So we just inherit their blind spots. We inherit their anxieties. We inherit their unquestioned belief that a safe, secure job is the ultimate destination, without ever stopping to ask if that model actually still works.
All right, because in 1956, the poor dad's advice made a certain kind of sense. It was the era of the company man. You gave a corporation 40 years, they gave you a gold watch and a pension that paid you until you died.
Exactly. It was a completely different social contract.
But today, in an era of the gig economy, massive inflation, AI replacing white-collar jobs left and right, and just the total evaporation of corporate loyalty, that safe, secure job is arguably the riskiest position you can hold.
Precisely. The board has completely changed, but we are still out here playing by the rules from 70 years ago. And I think that brings us perfectly to the first major conceptual shift in the deep dive, which is all about the actual language we use when we talk to ourselves about money.
Yes, the vocabulary of wealth.
Right. The author points out this razor-sharp contrast between the exact phrasing the two dads used. The poor dad had a reflexive habit of saying, I can't afford it.
Which we all say.
We all say it. Whenever he wanted something outside his immediate budget, he would just make that declarative statement, I can't afford it, and bam, that was the end of the conversation. But the rich dad absolutely forbade those words in his house.
He wouldn't let them say it at all.
Never. He insisted that the boys reframe it and ask a question instead. They had to ask, how can I afford it?
This is such a masterclass in cognitive framing. On the surface, I know it might sound like a minor semantic difference or just a bit of fluffy, positive thinking self-help.
Right, The Secret or something.
Exactly, just manifest it. But the psychological mechanics operating beneath those phrases are actually profound. When you say, I can't afford it, you are making a declarative statement of fact. You are achieving cognitive closure.
You let yourself off the hook.
You completely let yourself off the hook.
Yeah.
The brain essentially powers down because the problem has been resolved, albeit in a negative way. There's no further action required, no metabolic energy needed to solve a puzzle. It is an absolute acceptance of financial defeat, but it's disguised as financial prudence.
Disguised as prudence. That's such a great way to put it. Because you feel responsible when you say it, right?
Totally. Think about the algorithms that run our social media feeds today. If you engage with a certain type of content, the algorithm just feeds you more of it automatically. You don't have to search, you don't have to think, the machine does the work, and your brain just passively consumes.
Oh, that's a scary analogy, but it's so true.
Right. So if you walk around saying, I can't afford it, you are programming your own internal algorithm for learned helplessness. You're giving your brain permission to be lazy. You're basically letting your intellectual autocorrect fill in the blank with failure.
Intellectual laziness is exactly the right term here. The rich dad believed that the human brain is the most powerful computer in the world. But like any muscle, it requires resistance and exercise to grow stronger.
It needs a workout.
It does. When you flip that declarative statement into an interrogative question, how can I afford it? You completely change the neurological response. You force the brain to wake up. You trigger it into an active problem-solving state. A question inherently demands an answer.
It creates an open loop.
Yes, an open loop. It requires creativity, analytical thinking, engagement. It forces you to scan your environment for resources, for leverage, and for opportunities that you were literally blind to just 5 seconds ago.
So the practical application for you here isn't that you should go out and buy a Ferrari just because you want one and figure out the math later.
Yeah.
He wasn't advocating for reckless, debt-fueled spending.
No, definitely not.
The rich dad was fanatical about the mental exercise. He believed that the stronger your brain gets, the more wealth you can conceptually create. Automatically defaulting to "I can't afford it" is basically a symptom of a weak financial mind.
And you can really see the long-term compounding effects of this mental habit in the lives of the two fathers.
Oh, for sure.
The poor dad, by constantly putting his financial brain to sleep with "I can't afford it," grew financially weaker and more stressed over time, despite his ever-increasing government salary. But the rich dad, by constantly forcing his brain to figure out "how can I afford it," grew financially stronger. It's the exact same mechanism as physical fitness.
It's the difference between sitting on the couch and going to the gym.
Exactly. Proper physical exercise increases your health span.
Yeah.
Proper mental exercise increases your wealth span.
It's such a simple audit you can do on yourself right now. Next time you are looking at something you want, whether that's an investment property, capital to start a business, or even just a higher quality of life, and your brain automatically generates the thought, well, I can't afford that, you have to catch the autocorrect.
You have to interrupt the pattern.
Interrupt it.
Yeah.
Stop yourself. Flip the script. Ask yourself, how can I afford that?
Yeah.
And just see what your brain comes up with. You might be shocked by the systemic solutions it generates when you actually force it to do its job, instead of just letting it hit the snooze button.
I love that. But, awareness of your internal language is really just the critical foundation. Awareness without execution is just philosophy, right? We have to look at the inciting incident where these two 9-year-old boys actually try to put this desire for wealth into physical action.
Oh, this is the best part.
Because their first attempt is a spectacular, highly instructive disaster.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
So it's 1956, and the author and his friend Mike are attending this public school. But because of how the district lines are drawn in their town, they're the only poor kids in a school that is heavily populated by the children of plantation managers, doctors, and bankers.
A tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and one day, a wealthy classmate gets a brand new Cadillac in the family, and he invites a bunch of friends to his family's beach house for the weekend. But our author and Mike are explicitly left off the guest list. And why? Because they are the quote-unquote poor kids.
Ouch. That is a harsh, visceral moment of social exclusion, and for a 9-year-old, that stings deeply.
Oh, it crushes you.
But that emotional hurt acts as a massive catalyst. The young author goes home to his highly educated biological father and asks, point blank, "Dad, can you tell me how to get rich?"
And the dad's response is just classic.
Right. The father puts down his evening newspaper, and he gives a very typical, well-meaning, but completely useless piece of generalized adult advice. He says, "Use your head, son." He tells him he needs to learn to make money.
Use your head to make money. I mean, that is literally all he gives him. It's like telling someone who wants to learn how to code an app to just use a keyboard.
Exactly. It's technically true, but practically useless.
Totally useless. So these two 9-year-olds take this advice with absolute, literal seriousness. They form a business partnership. They spend weeks running around their neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking their bewildered neighbors to save their empty toothpaste tubes. And you have to remember, in the 1950s, toothpaste tubes weren't made of plastic like they are today.
No, they were made of lead.
Lead?
Yes. So they stockpiled this massive cardboard box of used, crumpled lead toothpaste tubes next to the family washing machine, much to the mother's absolute horror.
I can only imagine.
She finally threatens to throw the whole toxic mess out, which, of course, forces the boys to dramatically accelerate their production schedule.
Right. They pivot straight to manufacturing. So the poor dad drives up to the house one afternoon with a colleague, and they are greeted by an absolute disaster zone in the driveway. There is fine white plaster of Paris powder covering everything. It looks like a localized blizzard just hit Hawaii.
In the driveway.
In the driveway. The family's charcoal hibachi grill is glowing red hot, and on top of the coals is a steel pot where these kids are literally melting down the lead toothpaste tubes.
Oh my gosh.
They are pouring the molten lead through small holes into milk cartons filled with plaster molds.
The father cautiously approaches this hazardous industrial operation, and he asks what on earth they are doing. And the young author proudly looks up and announces, "We're doing what you told me to do. We're going to be rich. We're making money."
He takes it so literally.
So literally, he taps open one of the plaster molds, and a perfectly cast, solid lead nickel falls out into his hand.
They were forging nickels. They were straight up counterfeiting federal currency in the driveway.
It's unbelievable.
The dad's friend just bursts out laughing, but the poor dad has to sit these two dust-covered, lead-poisoned 9-year-olds down on the front steps and gently explain the concept of counterfeiting and why the federal government frowns upon it.
It's a brilliant, humorous anecdote, but it served a really vital analytical purpose for our deep dive. The biological father, the poor dad, handles the situation with incredible grace, honestly. He praises their initiative, he tells them he is genuinely proud of their creativity and their bias toward action, and he urges them not to lose that entrepreneurial spark.
Which is good parenting.
It is, but he has to point out the glaring flaw. They're breaking the law. And this illustrates a crucial, timeless point. Raw enthusiasm and initiative, devoid of financial literacy, are incredibly dangerous.
Oh man, think about how often we see this exact dynamic play out today.
All the time.
You see someone who is just desperate to escape their 9-to-5, so they buy an online course on Amazon FBA dropshipping, or they throw their life savings into some volatile crypto token, or they start a hustle culture marketing agency. They have absolute manic enthusiasm.
They're grinding.
They're working 18-hour days, grinding, sweating. But they have zero understanding of profit margins, customer acquisition costs, tax liabilities, or cash flow mechanics. They mistake sheer exhausted activity for actual business building.
Yeah, they confuse motion with progress.
Exactly. They think that just because they are stressed and busy, they must be making progress. Initiative is the engine, absolutely. You need a massive engine to get a business off the ground. But financial literacy is the steering wheel. If you put a V8 engine in a car with no steering wheel, you're not going to win the race. You're just going to crash into a brick wall at a much higher speed.
Or, in the boy's case, end up in federal prison.
Right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You absolutely must have both. And the poor dad is self-aware enough to recognize that he doesn't have the financial literacy to be the steering wheel for them. He admits, look, I chose to be a school teacher. I really don't know how to make money. He understands how to earn a salary, but not how to make money.
It's a huge distinction.
It is. So he directs them to the person who does. Mike's father, the rich dad. And this is where the real education begins. But it doesn't look anything like the scholastic education the boys are accustomed to.
No, it is the exact opposite of a classroom. They manage to secure a meeting with Mike's dad. They go to his modest house on a Saturday morning, wait on the porch for hours while he deals with the revolving door of restaurant managers and construction supervisors.
He's busy.
Very busy. When he finally comes out to talk to them, he makes an offer. And it's a brutal take-it-or-leave-it offer. He agrees to teach them how to make money, but he refuses to do it classroom style. He says, you work for me, I'll teach you. You don't work for me, I won't teach you.
He emphasizes a core principle of his philosophy right away. He can teach them 100 times faster if they are actively working and experiencing the environment. Sitting passively in a chair listening to a lecture is a complete waste of his time.
Yeah, he's not going to just draw on a chalkboard.
Right. And he forces a rapid decision, noting that knowing when to make quick, decisive choices is a fundamental business skill. The boys agree, and they find themselves assigned to work in one of his convenience stores. And keep in mind, these are early open-air superettes in 1950s Hawaii, sweltering in the tropical heat with absolutely no air conditioning.
And the job he gives them is excruciatingly monotonous. 3 hours every single Saturday, they have to take canned goods off the shelves, brush the dust off them with a feather duster, and restack them perfectly.
So it's awful.
It gets worse. Every time a car drives by the open doors, more dust swirls into the store, completely undoing their work and their compensation for this grueling, mind-numbing labor. 10 cents an hour.
Oh, wow.
30 cents for an entire morning's work. Even in 1956, that was pennies. He could barely buy 3 comic books.
And here is the truly agonizing part of the lesson. The rich dad completely ignores them for weeks.
He ghosts them.
He ghosts them. He doesn't come by the store to check on them. He doesn't offer any follow-up lectures or mentorship. He just lets them sweep dust for 10 cents an hour. By the fourth week, the young author is furious.
That would be too.
Right. He feels completely exploited. He feels like he's a slave working for starvation wages, and he hasn't learned a single microscopic thing about getting rich. So he decides he's had enough, and he is ready to march into the rich dad's office and quit.
Wait, hold on. I have to interject here, because if a business owner did that today, they'd be shut down by the labor board by noon.
Oh, without a doubt.
You've got a wealthy adult making a 9-year-old kid wait in a musty room, ignoring him, putting him to work in a sweltering store for literal pennies, and then just vanishing. I mean, isn't that just straight-up exploitation? How does the author justify this as a profound financial lesson, and not just an abusive child labor practice? Even his biological dad, the poor dad, was furious and wanted to report the rich dad to the authorities.
It's an entirely valid reaction, and honestly, it is exactly the emotional reaction the rich dad was engineering.
Oh, so it was a setup.
Completely. When the young author finally confronts him, and he's practically in tears, accusing him of being a crook, a cheapskate, and a liar who exploits children, the rich dad doesn't get defensive at all. He just rocks back in his chair, smiles, and says, "Not bad. In less than a month, you sound like most of my employees."
Oof. That line is just brutal. It is a gut punch, but it's brilliant.
It shifts the entire context of the experience. The rich dad uses this confrontation to explain his pedagogical methodology. He asks the furious boy, "Does teaching mean talking or a lecture?" That's how they teach you in school. But that is not how life teaches you.
Right.
The rich dad explains that life doesn't teach by handing you a syllabus or standing at a chalkboard. Life teaches by pushing you around. Every push, every frustration, every unpaid bill or terrible boss is life saying, "Wake up, there's something here you need to learn."
Ah, so the 10-cent wage wasn't about the labor at all.
Not at all.
It was a simulation. It was a perfectly controlled environment designed to induce a specific, highly potent emotional response.
Exactly. It was a simulated, concentrated taste of adult life. The rich dad explains that when life pushes people around, they generally default to one of two reactions. The majority of people simply give up. They let life push them into submission, they settle into a job they tolerate, they complain mildly on weekends, and they cling desperately to the illusion of job security.
And the other group.
The other group gets angry and fights back, but, and this is the tragedy, they fight back against the wrong things. They push back against their boss, their job, their spouse, or the political party in power. They blame external factors for their internal anxiety and financial struggle.
Man, when you internalize that frustration, instead of projecting it onto your boss or the economy, it forces a really uncomfortable realization. If you are constantly blaming your employer or inflation or the tax code, you fundamentally believe that they are the problem.
Yes.
And if they are the problem, the only way for your life to improve is for them to change. You are basically sitting around waiting for a corporation or a politician to suddenly become generous and solve your life for you. You are giving away 100% of your power.
That is the core insight of the 10-cent lesson right there. It's about what psychologists call the locus of control. People with an external locus of control believe life happens to them. People with an internal locus of control believe they happen to life.
That's a powerful distinction.
The rich dad tells him, "Look, if you think I'm the problem, then you have to figure out how to change me. But if you realize that you're the problem, then you can change yourself, learn something, and grow wiser." It is infinitely easier to change yourself than to try and change everyone else in the world.
So true.
By paying him a miserable, insulting 10 cents an hour, the rich dad forced the boy to feel the frustration, the bubbling anger, and the utter helplessness that most adults feel for 40 years of their working lives. He forced him to experience the emotional reality of being an employee trapped by the desperate need for a paycheck.
So the takeaway for you listening, if you feel stuck or underpaid right now, is profound. The frustration you feel at your job isn't a signal to complain to your coworkers at the water cooler. It's a signal to learn.
It's feedback.
Exactly, it's feedback. Stop waiting for external salvation. Look inward and ask, what specific skill am I missing? What leverage do I lack? What mindset is keeping me anchored to this desk? The pain of the 10-cent wage was the curriculum.
And understanding that pain bridges us directly to the psychological mechanics that keep people trapped in that cycle forever. The rich dad explains that true learning, the kind that builds empires, requires energy, passion, and a burning desire. But when it comes to money, most people are completely disconnected from passion. Instead, they are driven by two incredibly primitive emotions, fear and greed.
Fear and greed, or, as the rich dad sometimes frames it, fear and desire. These are the twin engines of what he calls the rat race.
Right.
Let's actually map out how this cycle works, because it's so insidious and so universally normalized that most people don't even realize they're in it. The rich dad explains that the fear of not having money is what wakes you up in the morning.
An alarm clock feeling.
Yes, it's that low-level hum of anxiety, that knot in your stomach when you think about rent or groceries or the electric bill. It's the survival instinct kicking in, pushing you out the door, into traffic and into your cubicle. You think, if I don't go to work, I can't survive. I'll end up on the street. So raw fear dictates your primary action.
Yes, fear gets you to the office. But then, at the end of the 2 weeks, you get that paycheck. And the moment that money hits your account, the second emotion activates. Greed or desire.
The fun part, briefly.
Briefly, you have capital in your hands, and suddenly your brain starts running simulations of all the wonderful things that money can buy, the temporary joy, the physical comfort, the social status, the new car, the vacation. So you spend the paycheck to satisfy that desire. You buy the things.
But it doesn't last.
No, the joy is incredibly short-lived. The money is gone, the credit card bills arrive, and that old familiar fear of not having money wakes you up in a cold sweat again. So you go back to work. Earn, spend, fear, desire. Earn, spend, fear, desire. This is the physiological pattern. This is the rat race.
The author illustrates this perfectly with the image of a donkey pulling a heavy cart. The owner of the donkey is sitting on the cart, dangling a carrot on a stick just an inch in front of the donkey's nose.
Such a vivid metaphor.
The owner knows exactly where he's going. He's steering the cart to his destination. But the donkey is just blindly, desperately chasing an illusion. It is exhausting itself, pursuing a carrot it will never actually catch. The donkey thinks that if it just walks a little faster, pulls a little harder, puts in a few more hours of overtime, it will finally get the reward. But tomorrow, the owner will just dangle another carrot.
It's a sobering, almost depressing image because it perfectly encapsulates how the vast majority of society relates to their income. The paycheck is the carrot. Millions of people wake up every day, go to work, and chase the illusion of security, completely oblivious to who's actually sitting on the cart driving it.
Who's holding the stick?
Exactly. And as the book points out, the entities driving the cart are the business owners utilizing your labor, the government extracting taxes before you even see the money, and the banks extracting interest through your mortgage and credit cards.
We see the modern equivalent of the carrot everywhere today. We call it lifestyle creep, or the hedonic treadmill. You get a promotion, you get a $15,000 raise, and what is the immediate visceral instinct?
Spend it.
The very first thought isn't, great, I can invest this and buy back my time. The thought is, awesome, I can finally trade in my Honda for a Tesla. Or I can move out of my roommate situation and get that luxury apartment downtown with the exposed brick.
Oh, absolutely.
The very second the income increases, the desire increases proportionally to swallow it entirely. You upgrade the carrot, but you are still the exact same donkey pulling the exact same cart. You haven't bought financial freedom. You've just financed a more expensive cage. You're running faster on a treadmill that's been turned up to a higher speed.
And what's crucial to understand here, and this is a point the rich dad makes very clear, which often surprises people, is that this trap isn't just reserved for the poor or the middle class.
Really?
Yeah, people assume that once you hit a certain income bracket, you escape the rat race. But does having more money actually solve the fundamental problem of fear and desire? From a behavioral economics standpoint, the answer is an emphatic no. In fact, accumulating wealth without financial intelligence often makes the fear exponentially worse.
Wait, how does getting rich make the fear worse? That seems totally counterintuitive. You have millions in the bank. Shouldn't the fear of starving just go away?
Well, the fear of starving goes away, sure, but the nature of the fear mutates. If you haven't mastered your internal emotional landscape, accumulating money just changes the target of your anxiety. You are no longer afraid of being poor, you become absolutely terrified of losing your wealth.
Oh, I see.
The rich dad notes that he has friends who are millionaires but are significantly more desperate, anxious, and neurotic than when they were dead broke. They are terrified of losing the massive mansions, the luxury cars, and most importantly, the elevated social status that the money has bought them.
The golden handcuffs.
Exactly. The weak, needy part of their psyche is screaming even louder. They are driven by an intensified pathological fear of losing it all and looking like a failure. Money fundamentally cannot soothe the soul. It basically acts as an amplifier for whatever emotional state is already present.
Money cannot soothe the soul. That is profound. So the absolute necessity for you here is to aggressively audit your emotional reactions to money. When you catch yourself saying, I need a new job or I need to ask for a raise, you have to stop and interrogate that thought.
You have to step back.
Is this my rational, strategic intellect making a calculated business decision, or is this just my fear talking? Am I trying to solve a systemic problem, or am I just reacting blindly to a stimulus? As the rich dad brilliantly points out, a job is usually just a short-term solution to a long-term problem. It's putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage.
Exactly. The ultimate goal is using your emotions to think, rather than thinking with your emotions. That is the critical distinction between the wealthy and everyone else. And to teach the boys how to actually execute this, how to physically break the cycle of fear and desire, the rich dad initiates a radical test.
A very radical test.
He takes away the 10 cents an hour. He tells them that if they truly want to learn how to stop working for money, they have to work for him for absolutely nothing. Zero pay.
Which is just wild. Think about that negotiation. You go in furiously demanding a raise, and you leave agreeing to work for free.
Only a 9-year-old, right?
Yeah, seriously. The young author didn't even tell his biological dad about this new arrangement because he knew his highly educated poor dad would completely lose his mind and probably call the police.
Oh, he would have intervened immediately.
So the boys commit. They work for 3 more weeks, 3 hours every Saturday, dusting those same cans in that same sweltering store for free. And the physical work isn't the hard part, it's the psychological toll. It's the agony of missing Saturday morning baseball games with their friends and not having a single penny in their pockets to buy a comic book.
And then, when they are at their most vulnerable, the rich dad comes to the park where they are taking a break, and he tempts them. He actively tests the limits of their emotional regulation.
The briar patch.
Yes. He sits down on a park bench with them and offers to pay them 25 cents an hour. The young author notes that his heart immediately beats faster. 25 cents would be huge money for him. But they remember the lesson. They stay silent.
They hold the line.
They hold the line. Then the rich dad slowly escalates. He offers $1 an hour. The author's brain is screaming at him to take the deal. Then $2 an hour. Keep in mind, in 1956, $2 an hour for a 9-year-old would make him the richest kid in his school.
Oh, he'd be royalty.
He could buy a new bicycle, a new baseball glove, and total respect from his peers. The desire is physically overwhelming.
But they don't say a word. They just sit there, biting their lips, staring back at him, and then the rich dad drops a nuclear option. He offers them $5 an hour.
Which is insane.
It's an absurd, ridiculous, almost mythical amount of money for a child at that time. And suddenly, the author describes this profound internal shift. The offer was so massively big that it crossed the threshold into the ridiculous, and the temptation just instantly evaporated. A strange calm set in.
The fever broke.
The fever broke. The weak, needy part of his soul that had a price tag was finally silenced. The part of him that had no price took over.
This is a monumental psychological breakthrough. It is the exact moment he escapes the rat race internally. The rich dad was pushing them into the psychological briar patch of their own fear and greed. By refusing to give in to their screaming emotions, by refusing to leap at the dangling carrot, no matter how gigantic and juicy it got, the boys learned the superpower of delaying their reactions.
Financial stoicism.
Yes. They successfully decoupled their sense of security, their self-worth, and their labor from the immediate dopamine hit of a paycheck. They mastered their emotions by choosing to observe their thoughts, rather than reacting blindly to financial fear or desire.
Think about how immensely powerful that is in today's world. Most of us are completely hopelessly at the mercy of our paycheck. If our boss hints at layoffs, panic sets in. If they offer us a slight 5% bump, provided we agree to work 60-hour weeks and answer emails on Sundays, our emotions hijack our logic.
We say yes before we even think.
We say yes because we are physically addicted to the biweekly drip of the paycheck. The profound lesson here is that you must consciously decouple your labor from the emotional need for that immediate financial reward. You have to train yourself to think objectively and strategically about money, even when your survival instincts are screaming at you to just grab the cash.
And once you achieve that level of emotional detachment, something incredible happens neurologically. When your brain is no longer hyper-focused on securing the next immediate paycheck to survive, your peripheral vision opens up. You suddenly have the cognitive bandwidth to see opportunities that everyone else is completely blind to.
Which brings us to the culmination of the chapter, learning how to actually make money work for you.
Yes, this is the payoff. This is where the theory becomes reality. So the boys are still working for free in the convenience store. And because they aren't getting paid, their brains are in overdrive, desperately trying to figure out how to generate income without relying on a wage from Mrs. Martin, the store manager.
They're constantly asking, how can we afford it? Exactly. And one day, because their vision is clear, the young author notices a routine task Mrs. Martin performs that he had never really paid attention to before.
He observes her taking the unsold, outdated comic books, cutting the top half of the cover off to give back to the distributor for a refund credit, and then throwing the rest of the perfectly readable comic book into a large cardboard box to be incinerated.
Just throwing them away. The author immediately approaches the comic book distributor when he arrives and asks if they can have the discarded half-cover comics. The distributor agrees, but he lays down one strict, legally binding condition. They cannot resell them.
A major constraint.
So what do these two 9-year-olds do? They can't legally sell the comics, but they now own a massive stack of physical assets. They revive their old business partnership, but this time, they aren't melting lead and breaking federal law.
Thankfully.
They take hundreds of these discarded comic books, haul them to Mike's house, put them in the basement, and open a private comic book library.
They engineer a completely new business model out of thin air using discarded materials. They charge the neighborhood kids 10 cents for admission to the basement library. For that single dime, a kid can come in for 2 hours after school and read as many comic books as they physically can.
Which is an amazing deal.
It is. Since buying a single new comic book cost 10 cents at the store, it was a massive, irresistible bargain for the customers. A fast reader could get through 5 or 6 issues in one sitting.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
They literally invented a subscription sauce model in a basement in 1956. But here is the most important part of the entire story.
Right.
The boys didn't just create another tedious job for themselves. They didn't just sit in the basement for hours playing librarian. They created a system.
A true business system.
They hired Mike's younger sister, who was very studious and responsible, to act as the head librarian. Her sole job was to collect the dimes at the door, make sure no one smuggled books out under their shirts, and log the daily attendance. And they paid her $1 a week for her management services.
Let's break down the actual math and the operational paradigm shift here, because this is the entire Rich Dad philosophy in miniature. They were averaging $9.50 a week in gross revenue from the admission fees. They paid their employee, the sister, $1 a week. That left them with $8.50 a week in pure net profit.
Wow.
Now, for 9-year-olds in 1956, that is a staggering amount of capital. But the raw dollar amount isn't what really matters. What matters is the underlying mechanism.
Exactly. The $8.50 is irrelevant. The revelation is that they were making $8.50 a week in passive income. They weren't even in the basement.
They were completely detached from the labor.
They were still honoring their agreement with the rich dad, working their mandatory 3 hours on Saturday for free at the convenience store, going to school during the week, playing baseball, and their comic book library was generating cash flow completely independent of their physical labor.
This is the operational definition of the rich dad's core thesis. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. By working for free, their minds were forced open to an opportunity that was literally sitting in a cardboard trash box.
Hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. Think about it. Everyone else in that store, Mrs. Martin, the older employees, the customers, they all saw those discarded comics as garbage. They saw them as trash because their vision was narrowed by their hyper-focus on their hourly wage. They were only looking for a paycheck.
Right.
The boys, freed from the blinding neurosis of the paycheck, looked at the exact same box of torn paper and saw a scalable asset.
They successfully shifted their focus from trading hours for dollars to building, owning, and managing a system. The system, the basement, the books, the sister, did the actual work. The asset generated the cash flow.
Yeah.
And even when some older bullies eventually started a brawl in the basement and the two dads forced them to shut the business down 3 months later, it didn't matter. The lesson was permanently cemented in their neural pathways. They had tasted the immense power of creating money, legally and systematically, from nothing. They knew how to build a cart instead of just being the donkey pulling it.
And if we synthesize all of these components, the language of wealth, the danger of blind initiative, the 10-cent simulation, the twin traps of fear and greed, and the revelation of the comic book library, what is the actual soul of this chapter?
The big takeaway.
The soul of this lesson is the profound realization that money, in its daily essence, is an illusion. It is a tool of measurement and exchange, nothing more. It is not real in the emotional way we treat it.
It's just a metric.
Right. The true root cause of poverty and financial struggle isn't a bad economy, it isn't an unfair government, and it isn't greedy rich people. The root cause is the self-inflicted fear and ignorance that cause us to trade our most precious, finite asset, our time on this earth, for the fragile illusion of security offered by a biweekly paycheck.
We let fear dictate our career choices, and we let greed dictate our spending habits. And we just run faster and faster on the wheel, exhausted, hoping something magical will somehow change.
But it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Because real wealth isn't about how many zeros are on your paycheck. As the highly educated poor dad proved, you can have a massive, prestigious salary and still be suffocating in debt. Real wealth is the mental discipline to decouple your labor from your income. It is the ability to master your emotions, to think objectively and creatively when your survival instincts are terrified, and to painstakingly build systems that continue to work while you are sleeping.
It's about consciously moving from being the exhausted donkey chasing the carrot to being the architect who owns the card and designs the path. It requires stepping out of the comfortable, lazy zone of a declarative statement like I can't afford it and stepping into the rigorous, sometimes painful intellectual exercise of asking, how can I afford it?
You have to do the mental push-ups.
You do.
Yeah.
It demands that we let life push us around, not to victimize ourselves or complain, but to humbly learn the mechanical lessons it's trying to teach us.
Okay, let's bring this all the way home. I want you to really think about this in the context of your own life right now. Let's go back to that chessboard we talked about at the very beginning. If we pause the game right now and look at your pieces, what would we see?
A very revealing snapshot.
If your primary paycheck miraculously stopped tomorrow morning, if your boss called you in and said, that's it, the company is downsizing, we're done, what systemic assets do you actually have in place that would keep working for you?
Are you relying entirely on your physical presence, your daily cognitive output, and your raw time to generate the income you need to survive?
Have you been building a library in your basement? Have you been creating a system, whether that's software, a delegated business, real estate, or intellectual property, that generates cash flow completely independent of your sweat? Or have you just spent the last decade of your life dusting someone else's cans in a sweltering room, praying they'll eventually offer you a 10-cent raise? You've taken the massive first step today by realizing that you shouldn't just work for money, but how do you actually build the architectural foundation to make money work for you? Keep your mind open, look at the board differently, and join us on our next deep dive as we explore why true financial literacy is the one subject they purposely, structurally leave out of the school system.
So, think about this for a second. If you won the lottery today, would you be rich in 5 years or entirely broke?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Literally.
Right, because in the long run, it's actually not how much money you make. It's how much money you keep.
Exactly. And we hear these crazy statistics all the time.
Yeah, like a staggering percentage of lottery winners just end up right back where they started, or, somehow even worse off within a decade.
It's wild. You see these professional athletes who sign contracts for, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then a few years after retirement, they're filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Which fundamentally breaks our brain's logic model. I mean, if the solution to all your financial problems was just getting a massive pile of money, those problems should just evaporate the moment someone hands you that giant check.
But they don't evaporate.
They don't. The problems actually seem to mutate and accelerate.
Yeah, that sudden influx of capital usually destroys a person's financial standing rather than securing it. It's the ultimate proof that our foundational understanding of wealth is just completely flawed.
And that core tension, that vast kind of invisible chasm between making money and actually understanding money is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a big one.
It really is. We are exploring Lesson 2 from Robert Kiyosaki's foundational and honestly paradigm-shifting text, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Specifically, the chapter titled, Why Teach Financial Literacy?
Right. And our mission for this discussion is to fundamentally rewire how you, the listener, view your bank account, your daily purchases, and your long-term financial trajectory.
We are going to explore why a high salary absolutely does not guarantee wealth.
Which is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
It is. But we're also going to look at how to identify the invisible forces that are secretly draining your finances, and why acquiring true assets is the non-negotiable baseline for anyone interested in business, entrepreneurship, or just achieving financial independence.
And look, the goal here isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. We aren't looking at hot stock tips or weird crypto hacks today.
Definitely not.
We are looking at how to build a concrete, unshakable foundation for lasting wealth. And to do that, I think we really have to start by looking at why so many smart, highly educated people are struggling to keep their heads above water.
Yeah, why is it that the more money we make, the more broke we often feel?
Exactly. Why does it feel like that?
Well, that feeling of running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up, it's entirely by design. Though, I mean, not necessarily a malicious design. It stems from a structural flaw in how we build our lives.
Okay, structural flaw. Unpack that for us.
So the author introduces this really brilliant visual metaphor here. He compares building wealth to constructing a building.
Okay, I like that.
Right. So if your goal is to build a modest, single-family home in the suburbs, the engineering requirements are pretty straightforward.
You don't need a team of structural engineers for a ranch house.
Exactly. You just pour a 6-inch slab of concrete, you let it cure, and you start putting up the framing. It's quick, it's relatively easy, and it supports a 1- or 2-story structure just fine.
Makes sense.
But if your ambition is to build the Empire State Building, pouring a 6-inch concrete slab is just a recipe for a catastrophic collapse.
Right, the whole thing would just tip over.
Yeah, to build a skyscraper, you have to spend an enormous amount of time and resources digging a massive deep hole and pouring a tremendously strong, complex foundation. And you have to do all of that before you ever see a single steel beam rise above ground level.
So in this metaphor, the argument is that everyone wants the skyscraper, but nobody wants to dig the hole.
Actually, it's almost the opposite. People try to build the skyscraper without even realizing they only have the 6-inch slab.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, in their rush to attain massive wealth, luxury, financial success, they entirely skip the deep foundational work.
And in the context of this text, what exactly is that deep foundation?
That foundation is financial literacy. It's the unglamorous work of understanding accounting, the ability to read and interpret numbers, and fundamentally grasping the mechanics of cash flow.
Which is not exactly the stuff that gets a lot of likes on social media.
No, it's boring. It's spreadsheets and terminology.
Yeah.
But it's essential.
You know, when you frame it like that, the root of the problem seems to lead directly back to the educational system.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we spend years, sometimes decades, sitting in classrooms. We are taught scholastic skills, how to read, how to write, how to do calculus.
Right.
And then we move into higher education or trade schools and learn professional skills. We learn how to be a software engineer or a surgeon, a corporate lawyer, a master electrician.
Which are all incredibly valuable skills.
They are. But the entire focus, like the singular metric of success in the traditional educational system, is just to equip you to enter the workforce and generate an income.
Yeah, that is the glaring blind spot. The system teaches you how to generate capital, but it remains entirely silent on capital allocation.
It teaches you how to make the money, but leaves you hanging on what to do with it once you have it.
Exactly. It imparts absolutely no wisdom on what to do when that money actually enters your bank account. How do you protect it? How do you mitigate taxes legally?
How do you stop inflation from just eating away at its purchasing power?
Right. And most importantly, how do you deploy that money so it actually works on your behalf?
And because students leave academia without this specific vocabulary, we just have a society filled with millions of highly educated, professionally dominant individuals who are financially drowning.
It's sad, really. They work incredibly hard, they get these rapid promotions, they earn top-tier salaries, but they never seem to accumulate actual freedom.
It kind of reminds me of a sports analogy. It's like spending your entire adolescence learning how to throw the perfect spiral in football.
Okay, I see where you're going.
You know, you spend thousands of hours at practice, your technique is flawless, you have an absolute cannon for an arm, but no one ever bothered to teach you how to read the scoreboard?
Or worse, they didn't even teach you which end zone you're supposed to be running toward.
Yes. If you don't know the rules of accounting, if you don't understand the basic scorekeeping of personal finance, you're just running around the field taking hits, you're getting tackled by expenses, and you're wondering why you're losing the game despite playing so hard.
That is a perfect way to put it. And the tragic outcome of not knowing how to read that financial scoreboard is that people assume the solution is just to throw the ball harder.
They think it's an effort problem.
Right. They believe their financial stress is strictly a revenue problem. So what do? They work harder. They take on a second job. They negotiate fiercely for a higher salary, or they jump to a more demanding role.
But a core thesis of this chapter is that More money seldom solves money problems.
In fact, if your financial intelligence is low, more money accelerates your problems.
Because money acts as an amplifier, right?
Exactly. It magnifies your existing behavioral habits. If your subconscious habit is to spend every single dollar you make, well, doubling your income merely guarantees you will double your expenses.
And usually you end up taking on more sophisticated, higher interest debt in the process. You upgrade the car, you upgrade the house.
Precisely. It calls to mind that old adage the author quotes. If you find you have dug yourself into a hole, stop digging.
Stop digging. Before you focus your energy on securing a higher salary, before you burn yourself out taking on side hustles, you have to focus on your financial education. You have to learn how the shovel works, and then you have to put it down.
Put down the shovel.
Which really brings us to the core mechanism of the entire book. The author claims there is really only one rule you need to master to stop digging and start building.
And it's rule number 1. It requires a complete, almost uncomfortable redefinition of 2 words we use literally every single day.
Assets and liabilities.
Yes, this is the ideological crux of the entire philosophy. Rule number 1 is unforgivingly simple. You must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and you must dedicate your life to buying assets.
And the bold claim made here is that rich people acquire assets, while the poor and the middle class acquire liabilities that they falsely but genuinely think are assets.
That's the trap. They think they are buying assets.
Now, on the surface, that sounds almost patronizingly simple. I mean, it sounds like a lesson designed for a child.
It does. But the author explicitly champions the KISS principle here. Keep it super simple.
But why is a concept that fits on a standard index card so difficult for intelligent, capable adults to actually implement?
Well, adults struggle precisely because we have been conditioned. We've had years of complex traditional education and professional jargon drilled into us.
Like if I ask a CPA to define an asset, I'm not getting a one-sentence answer.
Definitely not. If you open a standard dictionary or talk to a certified public accountant, you are going to receive a highly technical, multi-layered definition. It will involve accepted accounting principles, depreciation schedules, amortization, market valuations.
All sorts of nuance that just completely obscures the daily reality of the average person's wallet.
Right. To adopt the mindset presented in this text, adults have to undergo a serious process of unlearning. We have to set aside our academic pride and adopt a brutal, almost childlike simplicity to see the naked truth of how our money is actually behaving.
Okay, let's strip away all the CPA jargon then. Under the specific, simplified framework, what is the strict definition of an asset and what is the strict definition of a liability?
The definitions are governed entirely by the physical flow of cash, not by abstract market value, not by appraised worth, and certainly not by sentimental attachment.
Okay, cash flow.
Here is the rule. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket.
What's that?
That is the entire diagnostic test. If a thing is actively, consistently putting money into your pocket, it is an asset. If it requires capital to maintain, or if it constantly drains money from your pocket, it is a liability.
Okay, I have to push back on this because I think a lot of people listening, especially those with some background in traditional finance or accounting, will find this definition way too rigid.
Let's hear it.
Let's explore an edge case. Say I buy a vintage Rolex watch. I purchase it for $10,000. 5 years pass, and due to scarcity and demand, the market value of that watch is now $15,000.
Right.
But it's just been sitting in a temperature-controlled safe in my house. My bank, my insurance company, and a traditional accountant would all classify that watch as an asset on my personal balance sheet.
They absolutely would.
So under Kiyosaki's framework, is it an asset?
Under the strict cash flow-centric framework, no, it is absolutely not an asset.
But I've literally made $5,000 in unrealized gains. How can you argue it's not an asset?
Because of that exact word you just used, unrealized. The diagnostic test here is cash flow. While the watch has appreciated in abstract market value, is it actively dispensing cash into your bank account on a monthly basis while it sits in that safe?
No.
No. In fact, you are likely paying a premium on your homeowner's insurance policy to cover it, and you might have to pay hundreds of dollars to have the movement serviced so it actually retains that value.
That's true.
So it is actively taking money out of your pocket. Therefore, until the exact moment you sell it and realize a capital gain, it is acting as a liability. The numbers must tell a story of money actively flowing in.
Okay, I see where this leads, but let's escalate the pushback.
Bring it on.
What about Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway? Berkshire Hathaway famously has never paid a dividend.
Right.
If I own $1 million in Berkshire stock, by this strict cash flow definition, it's not putting a monthly check in my pocket.
Right.
Are we really saying one of the most successful investment vehicles in human history isn't an asset?
This is a great point, but this is where we really have to distinguish between different philosophies of wealth generation. The traditional finance world embraces capital appreciation, buying something, hoping the price goes up.
Buy low, sell high.
Exactly. But the philosophy of rich dad, poor dad is aggressively biased toward cash flow. The author utilizes this extreme, rigid definition to force a behavioral change in the reader.
How so?
When people rely on capital appreciation, hoping a stock goes up, hoping a watch becomes a collector's item, hoping their house value doubles, they are essentially speculating. They are relinquishing control to market forces.
You're just waiting and hoping.
Right. By forcing you to define an asset only as something that produces current cash flow, the author is demanding that you take active control of your income. The Warren Buffett example is sound in traditional finance, but for the average person trapped in the rat race, hoping a stock portfolio appreciates 30 years from now doesn't pay for their groceries today.
Cash flow provides immediate survivability.
Exactly. It's about surviving today while building for tomorrow.
It's a massive paradigm shift. It requires you to audit your entire life and every single purchase you make through a singular lens.
You really do.
I look at it a bit like scope creep in project management or software bloat in the tech world.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, as computer processors get faster and more powerful, software developers get lazier. Instead of writing highly efficient code, they write bloated programs that eat up all the new RAM so the computer doesn't actually feel any faster to the user.
Yeah, it still lags.
The same thing happens with our salaries. As our income increases, our lifestyle bloats to consume every available dollar. Every time you buy something, you have to interrogate it. Is this an employee I am hiring to go out into the world and work for me to bring back more money? Or is this a pet that I am going to have to feed, groom, and pay vet bills for every single month?
And financial illiteracy is simply the inability to distinguish the employee from the pet. People constantly buy pets, genuinely believing they are hiring employees, and then they wonder why they're just exhausted from feeding them all.
So to see this in action, we really need to look at how these definitions map onto reality.
Yes, let's look at the patterns.
The author introduces a visual aid utilizing a basic income statement, which simply tracks income coming in and expenses going out, and a balance sheet, which tracks assets and liabilities.
Simple accounting.
Right. By tracking the physical movement of money through these two documents, he categorizes the population into 3 distinct cash flow patterns. Walk us through the first one. What is the cash flow pattern of the poor?
So the pattern of the poor is the most straightforward and systemically the most precarious. In this model, money enters the income column, usually as an hourly wage or a low-tier salary.
Okay.
From there, the money flows straight down and immediately exits through the expense column.
It just vanishes.
The entirety of the income is consumed by the absolute necessities of survival. We're talking rent for a basic apartment, groceries, utilities, taxes, public transportation.
There's no leftover.
None. In this pattern, the individual has 0 assets generating income. And paradoxically, they generally don't have long-term liabilities either, like mortgages or major bank loans, because their income just isn't high enough to qualify for that kind of debt.
So the cash simply flows in and immediately flows out.
Yes, pure hand-to-mouth survival.
There's no retention of capital at all. Now let's look at the middle class, because this is the pattern that defines the majority of listeners, and it is the pattern the author famously dubs the rat race.
The infamous rat race.
How does cash flow operate for the middle class?
For the middle class, income still originates primarily through a salary from an employer.
Yeah.
But instead of flowing directly to basic survival expenses, the money takes a detour.
A very expensive detour.
Exactly. It flows first into the liability column. As the middle class establishes credit, they acquire mortgages, auto loans for 2 cars, extensive credit card balances, student loan debt.
And these liabilities just act as permanent fixtures on their balance sheet.
And they generate massive, recurring, mandatory expenses. You've got the monthly mortgage payment, the car lease payment, the minimum credit card payments. So the cash flows from income down into liabilities, which then forces the money out through the expense column.
And the truly insidious nature of this cycle becomes apparent when someone in the middle class actually achieves what society calls success.
Oh, this is the trap.
The author paints a very recognizable picture of a young, newly married couple. They start out in a cramped, rented apartment. They are both working. They realize they are saving money because two can live as cheaply as one, and they feel really optimistic.
Right, things are looking up.
Then the inevitable happens. One of them gets a promotion or a substantial raise. Their income shoots up. From a behavioral standpoint, what happens next?
Well, they experience a psychological shift. They feel successful, their bank account looks a bit fuller, and they decide it's time to upgrade their lifestyle to match their new professional status.
They earned it, right?
That's what they tell themselves. They decide they are tired of renting and they want to buy their dream home. So they take their new higher income and they qualify for a 30-year mortgage.
Boom! Massive liability.
They have now added a massive liability to their balance sheet. But it never stops there. Because they have a beautiful new house with a 2-car garage, it suddenly feels inappropriate to park a 10-year-old sedan in it.
So they finance a new SUV.
Of course. And then they realize their old apartment furniture looks terrible in the new living room, so they put $10,000 in new furniture on a credit card.
So the raise, the actual increase in income, didn't improve their financial standing at all. It just acted as the catalyst for an explosion in their liability column.
Exactly the opposite of improving their standing. It trapped them. Those new liabilities, the mortgage, the auto loan, the consumer debt, instantly create new, proportionally higher monthly expenses.
The property taxes are higher, the utility bills for the larger house are higher, the insurance on the new car is higher.
Even though their top-line revenue increased significantly, their mandatory expenses increased just as fast, if not faster. They are now officially entrenched in the rat race.
The numbers don't lie.
The cash flow tells the objective truth. They are working more hours, they are carrying way more stress, and they are earning more gross income, but their money is entirely commandeered by the liability column.
It is the literal definition of a treadmill, but a treadmill where the speed dial is maliciously broken.
That's a scary thought.
Because the faster you run, meaning the more you earn, the faster the belt spins, meaning the more you are obligated to spend just to maintain the facade. You are exhausting yourself, dedicating your prime years to your employer, but you never actually advance financially. You are just expending maximum effort to keep from being thrown off the back of the machine.
What's fascinating, and honestly somewhat tragic, is that this behavior isn't driven by stupidity. It's driven by deeply ingrained human psychology.
What do you mean?
It is fueled by twin emotional engines. Fear and desire.
Okay, fear of what?
The fear of ostracism, the fear of falling behind peers, and the intense, socially programmed desire to keep up with the Joneses. When a professional sees their colleagues upgrading their homes, taking lavish vacations, leasing luxury vehicles, the pressure to conform is just immense.
So they buy the symbols.
They use their income to purchase the symbols of wealth, completely ignoring the mechanical reality that those symbols are liabilities draining their cash flow.
Which perfectly sets up the contrast with the third pattern. We've mapped out the survival loop of the poor and the treadmill of the middle class. How does cash flow actually function for the rich? What is the mechanical difference?
The defining characteristic of the wealthy cash flow pattern is that it is decoupled from human labor.
Decoupled.
Yes. For the rich, the focal point is the asset column. This column is filled with income-generating vehicles, commercial real estate, dividend-paying equities, bonds, private business equities, or intellectual property like patents and royalties.
So things that produce money on their own.
These assets act as a tireless army. They generate cash flow, rental income, dividend checks, interest payments, and that money flows up into their income column.
So their income isn't dictated by how many hours they sat at a desk or how hard they swung a hammer.
Precisely. The assets are doing the heavy lifting. And the secret to perpetual wealth, the true compounding engine of this pattern, is what they do with the excess.
What do they do?
The rich take the passive income generated by their assets, pay their living expenses, and then take the surplus and funnel it directly back into buying more assets.
It's the financial equivalent of escape velocity.
Ooh, explain that.
Well, in physics, escape velocity is the speed an object needs to break free from a planet's gravitational pull. For the middle class, the gravity of their liabilities is just too strong. It pulls every single dollar down into expenses.
Oh, I love that.
But for the rich, the compounding effect of assets buying more assets eventually breaks the gravitational pull of their living expenses. The asset column grows autonomously, which means the income it produces grows autonomously, which means they can buy even larger assets. The wealth begins to snowball without their active labor.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Escape velocity.
So the immediate practical mandate for you listening is to conduct a ruthless audit of your own cash flow pattern.
Yes. Pull up your last 3 months of bank statements and look at the actual trajectory of your money.
Right. Is it coming in and immediately evaporating on rent and groceries? Is it being siphoned off by car payments, credit cards, and a massive mortgage? Or are you actively, intentionally diverting a portion of that flow to acquire assets that will pay you next month?
And look, conducting that honest audit is incredibly difficult, primarily because it forces you to confront the single most controversial, deeply triggering concept in Kiyosaki's entire philosophy.
Right. We have to dive into it. Key idea 4, the ultimate controversy.
Here we go.
If the fundamental flaw of the middle class pattern is that they buy liabilities they mistakenly believe are assets, what is the most egregious example? What is the biggest trap?
Brace yourself.
According to the author, the biggest financial trap in modern society is the family home.
The author launches a direct assault on the most sacred cow of the American dream. He aggressively challenges the widely accepted, culturally enforced dogma that your home is your biggest investment, or that your home is your greatest asset.
Which people just repeat like a mantra.
They do. But he argues that if you remove your emotional attachment and strictly apply rule number 1, evaluating it purely by cash flow, a primary residence takes money out of your pocket every single month, often for 30 years straight.
Therefore,
By definition, it is a liability.
let's break down the mechanics of this because this is where people immediately get defensive. The instinct is to scream, but I'm building equity. When I pay rent, it's 100% loss. When I pay my mortgage, I'm paying myself.
You hear that all the time.
But let's look at the actual cash flow and the invisible costs. When you buy a house, look at the amortization schedule of a standard 30-year mortgage. For the first 10 to 15 years, the vast majority of your monthly payment isn't going to principal.
No, it's going straight to the bank as interest. That money is gone.
Then you have property taxes, which basically act as a permanent rent you pay to the government. If you stop paying them, you'll quickly find out who really owns the house.
Exactly.
You have mandatory homeowners insurance. You have the constant drip of maintenance. The HVAC system dies. The roof needs replacing. The plumbing leaks. You have increased utility costs for cooling and heating a larger footprint. Every single one of those items is a cash outflow.
It is a relentless siphon on your liquidity. Because a primary residence requires a constant, non-negotiable outflow of cash just to maintain its baseline condition. By the author's strict definition, it is a liability.
It just strains you.
Now, it's vital to unpack why this idea is so upsetting to the average person.
Because it really upsets people.
It does. Because for generations, home ownership has been sold by governments, by banks, and by our parents as the absolute pinnacle of middle-class success. To be told that this ultimate symbol of security and achievement is actually a financial drain, it feels like a personal attack on their values and their years of hard work.
And to be clear, the author isn't some zealot saying you should never buy a house. He's not advocating that everyone should live in a van down by the river just to maximize their asset column.
Not at all. He is not saying don't buy a house. What he is demanding is semantic and mathematical honesty.
You just have to call it what it is.
You need to understand the difference between an asset and a liability so you can structure your purchases correctly. The systemic danger arises when a middle-class family ties up virtually all of their available liquidity and credit capacity in a primary residence.
Which happens constantly.
When all your money is locked inside the walls of your house, you suffer from 3 massive compounding missed opportunities.
Let's explore those because the opportunity cost is the real silent killer here. What is the first missed opportunity?
The loss of time. Capital needs time to compound. When your disposable income is heavily restricted by a large mortgage, high property taxes, and constant maintenance, you lose years, often decades, where that money could have been invested in true assets that grow and pay dividends.
And you can't get that compounding time back.
Never.
It's the difference between planting an orchard when you're 30 versus planting one when you're 50. The earlier you plant, the more harvests you get.
Spot on.
What is the second missed opportunity?
The loss of investment capital. Because a significant portion of your income is dedicated to feeding the liability of the house, you literally do not have the excess capital required to participate in high-yield investments.
So if a good deal comes along?
If a phenomenal real estate deal or a ground floor business opportunity presents itself, you have to pass because your money is trapped in the equity of your home, which, by the way, is notoriously illiquid and expensive to extract.
You are house rich and cash poor. And the third missed opportunity, which the author argues is the most devastating over a lifetime.
The loss of financial education. This is the crux of the issue. Because society tells people that buying a house is the ultimate responsible investment, they check that box and they just stop learning.
They think they crossed the finish line.
They believe their financial planning is complete. Because they don't have excess capital to invest in the stock market, commercial real estate, or business acquisitions, they never gain the practical experience of evaluating deals, managing risk, or understanding market cycles.
So they just stagnate.
They never develop financial intelligence because they think buying a house was all the investing they needed to do.
The downstream effect of that lack of education is a middle class that is terrifyingly fragile. They're entirely dependent on their W-2 employer or government safety nets for survival.
Completely dependent.
They can't take professional risks, they can't start a business, and they live in constant low-level terror of layoffs because that massive mortgage payment is due on the first of the month no matter what. They have no cash-flowing assets to act as a shock absorber.
To counteract this vulnerability, the text introduces a fascinating philosophical framework drawn from Japanese culture: the power of the mirror.
Okay, what is the significance of the mirror in this context?
The author recounts his rich dad discussing the Japanese awareness of three distinct powers: the power of the sword, the power of the jewel, and the power of the mirror.
The sword, the jewel, the mirror.
Right. The sword represents the power of weapons and military might. The jewel represents the power of money and economic influence. But the mirror represents the power of self-knowledge. And according to the philosophy, the mirror is the most potent of the three. It symbolizes the necessity for deep self-reflection, critical thinking, and inner wisdom.
It's the antidote to herd mentality.
Precisely. The middle class operates heavily on herd mentality. They blindly regurgitate financial dogma because it feels safe. Diversify your portfolio. Your home is your greatest asset. Get a safe, secure job.
Just do what everyone else is doing.
Right. But the power of the mirror requires looking at your own financial reflection, looking objectively at your cash flow patterns, and having the courage to ask, does this actually make sense for me, or am I just doing it because my neighbors are doing it?
That takes a lot of guts.
It requires the psychological fortitude to defy conventional wisdom when conventional wisdom is producing mediocre results.
So the highly practical, actionable takeaway for you listening is this. Do not treat your primary residence as a wealth-generating asset. Treat it as a lifestyle expense.
A lifestyle expense.
Exactly. If you want a bigger, nicer house with a pool and a 3-car garage, the strategy isn't to just cross your fingers, take out a jumbo mortgage, and pray your salary covers it.
Please don't do that.
The sophisticated strategy is to delay gratification by cash flowing assets first and allow the passive income generated by those true assets to pay for the expenses of the bigger house. The assets buy the luxuries.
That structural shift building the asset column to fund the liability column is the defining difference between the middle class and the wealthy.
This seamlessly transitions us to key idea 5. Because if a sprawling house in the suburbs and a massive 6-figure corporate salary don't actually make you wealthy, if in fact they might just be golden handcuffs proving you are deeply entrenched in the rat race, how do we accurately measure financial success? We clearly need a new definition of wealth.
We do. And to redefine wealth in a mathematically useful way, the author borrows a brilliant metric from R. Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, Fuller. For those who might not be familiar, Buckminster Fuller was a towering intellectual figure of the 20th century.
True genius.
He was a systems theorist, an architect, an inventor. He's most famous for creating the geodesic dome. But more than anything, he was a relentless, outside-the-box thinker who constantly challenged conventional systems.
And his definition of wealth operates entirely outside the paradigm of traditional personal finance. Fuller did not define wealth by the size of a bank account or a salary.
What did he use?
He defined wealth strictly by time, specifically a person's ability to survive a certain number of days forward. The diagnostic question is, if you and your spouse, if applicable, physically stopped working today, how many days could you survive financially while maintaining your current standard of living?
Wow. That completely subverts how society usually talks about money. Usually the conversation revolves around net worth. People brag about a high net worth, banks use it to qualify you for loans, financial advisors track it on fancy charts.
Everyone loves tracking net worth.
But the author, echoing Fuller, points out that net worth is often a dangerous illusion.
Net worth is a heavily flawed metric for true financial independence. because accepted accounting practices allow you to inflate your balance sheet with depreciating consumer junk.
The pets, not the employers.
Exactly. People pad their net worth calculation with the appraised value of their car, their golf clubs, their electronics, their designer wardrobe, and the trapped equity in their home.
But think about the survivability metric. If you suddenly lose your job and you need to pay the electric bill or buy groceries next week, you cannot pay the supermarket with your golf clubs.
They won't take them.
You can't slice off a piece of your home's equity to pay the water bill without undergoing a lengthy loan process. If you are forced to liquidate those consumer items in a crisis, you get pennies on the dollar at a pawn shop or an online marketplace. They do not help you survive.
They are dead weight in a crisis. So if net worth is often worth less than people assume, how do we actually calculate this survivability metric?
Right. How does the math work?
True wealth is a measurement of the relationship between the cash flow from your asset column and the outflow of your expense column.
Okay, keeping it simple.
You calculate it by determining your total monthly living expenses. Then you calculate the total passive income generated by your assets. The moment the monthly cash flow from your assets equals or exceeds your monthly living expenses, your survivability becomes infinite.
Infinite survivability.
You are, by definition, wealthy. You are financially independent, regardless of what your actual net worth number is.
Let me make sure this concept is crystal clear because it levels the playing field in a fascinating way.
Let's do an example.
Let's look at two hypothetical people. On one hand, we have a modest public school teacher who has been incredibly disciplined. They keep their expenses very low. Let's say they spend exactly $3,000 a month to live. Over the last decade, they used their savings to buy two small, modest rental properties, and after all expenses, those properties generate $3,000 a month in passive net cash flow.
Okay, perfect balance.
On the other hand, we have a high-powered corporate executive. They are pulling down $40,000 a month in salary.
Huge income.
Huge. But to maintain their image, they spend $40,000 a month on a massive mortgage in a luxury zip code, leases on two imported sports cars, country club dues, and private school tuition.
The treadmill is spinning fast.
Right. So under Buckminster Fuller's metric, you are saying the modest teacher is technically wealthier than the high-powered executive.
Unequivocally, yes.
That's crazy to think about.
It is, but look at the math. The corporate executive might possess all the visual trappings of extreme riches. To the outside world, they look like a titan of industry. But their survivability is exactly 0 days.
0.
The second they lose that job or suffer a health crisis and cannot work, their entire financial universe collapses because they have a terrifying $40,000 monthly burn rate and 0 passive cash flow to support it. They're entirely dependent on their labor.
While the teacher,
conversely, has achieved infinite survivability. If the teacher stops working tomorrow, the $3,000 from the rental properties continues to arrive every month, perfectly covering the $3,000 in living expenses. The teacher has bought their time back. The executive is simply a highly compensated, highly stressed, indentured servant to their liabilities.
It is a staggering shift in perspective. It implies that measuring your financial success by the dollar amount on your W-2 is a fool's errand. You must measure your success in days of survivability.
It changes the entire architecture of how you plan your life. The ultimate goal is no longer just to climb the corporate ladder, secure a promotion, and artificially inflate your lifestyle.
The goal becomes a mathematical equation.
Yes. Acquire enough true assets until the cash flow they produce crosses the break-even point with your baseline expenses. Once you cross that line, you're no longer working for money. Your money is working to sustain you.
Let's synthesize all of this because we have covered a massive amount of philosophical and practical ground from Lesson 2 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
We really have.
We explored the foundational metaphor of building a skyscraper versus a suburban slab, highlighting how our educational system willfully ignores financial literacy.
We broke down rule number 1, enforcing the strict cash flow definition of assets versus liabilities.
We audited the 3 distinct cash flow patterns: the survival of the poor, the treadmill of the middle class, and the compounding engine of the rich.
We waded into the controversy of why your primary residence is a liability that robs you of time, capital, and education.
And finally, we dismantled the illusion of net worth using Buckminster Fuller's metric of wealth as days of survivability. So, if we have to distill this entire sweeping conversation back down into one unifying, inescapable insight, the absolute soul of this chapter, what is the takeaway for the listener?
The soul of this chapter is the realization that your financial destiny is not dictated by the economy, your employer, or your college degree. It is entirely determined by your daily micro-choices.
Every single day.
Every single time a dollar enters your possession, you are making a conscious or subconscious choice about where to direct its flow. The wealthy choose to direct it into assets, the poor choose to direct it into basic expenses, and the middle class chooses to direct it into liabilities that they mistakenly believe are assets.
So it's about courage, really.
True financial literacy isn't merely about understanding the math on a balance sheet. It is possessing the psychological courage to look at your own numbers without emotion, without ego, and without caring what society or your neighbors think. It is the unglamorous, relentless discipline to diligently build an asset column that will eventually work harder than you ever could.
It's the ultimate transition from treating your labor for capital to deploying your capital as labor.
Wonderfully said.
So here is a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you navigate the rest of your week. The next time you are standing in a store, scrolling through an online checkout, or signing a contract for a major purchase, pause and ask yourself this brutal question. Am I buying an employee that is going to go out into the world, work tirelessly, and bring cash back to me, or am I buying a pet that I'm going to have to feed, house, and pay for every single month for the rest of its life?
It is the ultimate litmus test for financial independence.
But answering that question inevitably leads to the next, much larger dilemma. Once you awaken to the reality that you must build this asset column, how do you actually do it?
Right, what are the mechanics of doing it?
How do you acquire these assets without reckless risk, and more importantly, without quitting your day job and losing your primary source of income? How do you simultaneously work for someone else while minding your own business? That is the exact blueprint we are going to uncover next time as we dive into Lesson 3, Mind Your Own Business. So, have you ever thought about the fact that Ray Kroc, the guy whose name is just completely synonymous with the Big Mac and French fries, he didn't actually consider himself to be in the food industry at all.
It's wild to think about.
Right, because back in 1974, he was actually speaking to this room full of MBA students at the University of Texas. And after the lecture, they all went out for a few beers, and Kroc just casually asks the table, "What business am I in?"
Which sounds like a joke.
Exactly. The students literally laughed. They thought he was just pulling their leg. Finally, someone spoke up and said, "Ray, who doesn't know you're in the hamburger business?"
Yeah, the obvious answer.
Right. But Kroc, he just takes a sip of his beer, chuckles, and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate."
Man, that is just, it's a phenomenal piece of business history.
Yeah.
Because it completely, upends how most of us view our daily lives. And more importantly, our economic output.
Yeah, definitely. We're just so heavily conditioned to identify ourselves by what we do from 9 to 5, our profession. And because of that, we completely miss the underlying mechanical reality of our own labor.
Which really brings us to the core of what we're unpacking in today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at this fundamental shift in mindset. It's just absolutely vital for anyone who's interested in business, entrepreneurship, or honestly, just not wanting to work until they're 80.
Right, yeah. The burnout is real.
For sure. So it's about this critical distinction between your profession and your business. And, understanding this difference, it's really the only way to ensure you aren't just spending your entire life minding someone else's business while, completely ignoring your own.
Right, because we throw those words around interchangeably all the time. Right, profession, business, career, job.
Yeah, they all kind of mean the same thing in normal conversation. Exactly. But in the context of building actual financial independence, they are entirely different ecosystems. Like, if you walk down the street today and ask a random person, "Hey, what is your business?"
Yeah.
They'll almost always give you their profession.
Right. They'll say, "Oh, I'm a mechanical engineer," or "I'm a pediatric nurse," or "I'm a regional bank manager."
Yeah. But the immediate follow-up question to that, and this is the uncomfortable part for a lot of people, is, okay, but do you own the engineering firm? Do you own the hospital? Do you own the bank?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And 99% of the time, the answer is no.
Right. So they aren't actually in the banking business. Their profession is banking. What they're doing is actively, diligently, and, often exhaustingly minding the bank owner's business.
They're just pouring all that energy into someone else's bucket.
Exactly. They are dedicating their prime waking hours to expanding someone else's asset column.
Let's actually, let's visualize this mechanically, because I think looking at the actual flow of money makes this a lot more concrete for you as a listener. If we look at personal finances, like a corporate ledger, we basically have an income statement and a balance sheet.
Yeah, it's the plumbing of personal finance, essentially.
Right.
Your income statement tracks what comes in and what goes out, right?
Yeah.
Your income and your expenses. And then your balance sheet tracks what you own versus what you owe. So your assets and your liabilities.
Okay. So when you're working that 9 to 5 profession, you are pretty much entirely trapped on the income statement side of things.
Yeah, completely. You are just trading hours for dollars. You perform a service, a salary goes onto your income statement, and then the government immediately takes 30 or 40% of it through taxes before you even see it.
Ouch.
Right. And then you use whatever's left over to pay your living expenses. So your profession is essentially an engine that generates W-2 income. But your business, at least in this specific financial framework, we're discussing lives entirely on your balance sheet.
Okay, so specifically, your business is your asset column.
Precisely. That is your actual business.
And this is where we kind of have to look at the traditional educational system. Because, it feels perfectly designed to keep us focused on that income statement. It's like we're trained from kindergarten to just be exceptional employees.
Oh, absolutely. And the historical context is really crucial here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the modern educational system was largely formalized during that big transition from the agrarian age to the industrial age.
Right, when we moved into factories.
Exactly. Factories, large corporations, big bureaucracies, they all needed a standardized, compliant workforce. They needed people who would, show up on time, follow instructions to the letter, and perform specialized tasks.
That's right. They didn't want a bunch of independent thinkers running around.
Exactly. So schools were optimized to teach scholastic and professional skills. The formula was, you study torts, you become a lawyer. You study accounting, you become a CPA.
Which, that's great for society functioning smoothly. We need doctors and lawyers. But mechanically, it basically trains you to enter a profession where your primary economic function is to serve 3 other entities.
Yes. Break that down because it's so important.
Okay, so first, you're an employee, right? You're generating profits for a company's shareholders. Second, you are a taxpayer. So you're generating revenue for the government. And third, you're a consumer generating interest payments for the banks, the banks that hold your mortgage, your student loans, your credit cards.
It's brilliant from their perspective. You just become a highly efficient cog in 3 separate wealth-building machines.
Yeah, making everyone else incredibly wealthy through your profession, but you're leaving your own balance sheet completely barren. You're just minding everyone else's business.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of it.
So let's circle back to that Ray Kroc story, because the mechanics of how McDonald's actually operates, it's like the ultimate masterclass in separating the profession from the business.
Oh, it really is.
When Kroc told those students he was in real estate, he was revealing the hidden machinery of his whole empire.
Yeah, because most people, they don't know the name Harry Sunborn, but he was Kroc's financial genius in the early days.
What did he do?
Well, Kroc was really struggling to make a profit. He was just taking this tiny percentage of 15-cent hamburger sales. It wasn't scaling well. And Sunborn came in and realized that the fast food operations, the burgers, the fries, the shakes, they were just the bait.
Oh, wow. So the hamburger was just the profession.
Exactly. It was the daily grind that generated the cash flow.
But the business was something else.
Yes. Sunborn set up this system where McDonald's corporate would go out and find prime commercial real estate. We're talking corner lots at busy intersections.
The best locations.
Right. McDonald's would buy or lease that land themselves, and then they would turn around and sublease it to the franchisee at a massive markup. Plus, they took a percentage of their gross sales.
Man, that's wild. So the franchisee, the guy who is, working 80 hours a week, coming home smelling like fryer oil, he is essentially an employee whose labor is just paying the mortgage on the underlying real estate.
Yep. The franchisee is sweating over the grill, minding the fast food profession. Meanwhile, McDonald's corporate is sitting back, comfortably minding their real estate business.
And isn't McDonald's today like one of the largest single owners of commercial real estate on the entire planet?
They are. They own the most valuable intersections in the world.
It just perfectly illustrates that duality. You have to have a profession to generate the initial capital, right? The burgers have to be sold to pay for the land, but the wealth isn't in the burger. The wealth is in the land.
Exactly. The burger is the income statement. The land is the balance sheet.
You know, this really reminds me of an analogy. Think about going to school and getting a high-paying profession, right? It's kind of like being hired to plant this beautiful, elaborate garden in someone else's yard.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like you get a daily wage for your sweat. And if you do a spectacular job and the roses bloom perfectly, maybe the homeowner gives you a nice holiday bonus.
A little pat on the back.
Right. But at the end of the day, when the harvest comes, they own the tomatoes. And more importantly, the property value of their estate goes up. It's their yard. So minding your own business means making sure you're taking some of those seeds and actually planting them in your own backyard.
That garden analogy just hits the nail on the head. Because the moment you stop watering their yards, say you retire, or you get downsized, or you get sick, your income stops immediately.
Gone.
Yeah. Meanwhile, their property value stays high, and they just go out and hire a new gardener.
It's sobering.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, the nuance here is really critical. This framework is absolutely not suggesting that you march into your boss's office today and quit your job.
Please don't do that. Seriously, do not do that.
Right. I mean, society needs great engineers, doctors, and teachers.
Yeah.
We need professions. The practical application here is a cognitive shift. You have to mentally partition your life. Keep your daytime job. Be a highly effective, hardworking employee. Fulfill your obligations. But you have to recognize that the paycheck you receive from cultivating their garden is not your wealth.
Right.
It is just your seed capital.
Okay, so the real question becomes, what are you actually doing with the surplus from that paycheck? Are you taking your leftover money and just buying more, fancy shovels and designer overalls to wear in the other guy's garden? Or are you taking it home to plant your own seeds?
Which forces you to do an immediate audit of your energy, right? If you're pouring 100% of your mental bandwidth into climbing the corporate ladder, which, let's be real, just increases your W-2 income and pushes you into a higher tax bracket.
Oh, the taxes.
And you're pouring 0% into building your balance sheet, then you are completely failing to mind your own business.
Okay, but if minding our own business means taking our surplus cash and building an asset column, I feel like we run into this massive wall of misinformation here.
How so?
Well, because if I look around my house right now, I feel like I have a lot of assets, right? I have a car, I have some really nice electronics, I have good furniture. But this financial philosophy argues that most of us are filling our balance sheets with things we think are assets, but are actually just expensive junk.
Yeah, and this is where we have a fairly violent collision with traditional accounting principles and the whole banking industry.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because if you walk into a bank today and you ask for a loan, they're going to hand you a financial statement and ask you to calculate your net worth.
Right, and they encourage you to put absolutely everything on there. Like, they want to know the value of my car, my golf clubs, my watch, my designer suits. They want that net worth number to look as fat as possible.
Because the bank is looking for collateral. They want to know what they can seize and liquidate if you default on the loan.
Okay, that makes sense from their side.
Sure. But using that standard accounting method for your own personal financial compass, it's a dangerous illusion. It creates a completely false sense of security.
Why is it so dangerous, though?
Well, think about it. If you lose your job on a Tuesday and you have a mortgage payment due on Friday, you can't just chop off a sleeve of your Armani suit and hand it to the teller.
Right. Here's some Italian silk. Please don't foreclose on me.
Exactly. Furthermore, the valuation on those personal effects, it's almost entirely fictional the moment you purchase them.
Yeah, the depreciation is crazy.
Think about a brand new $400 titanium golf driver, right? The second you take off the plastic wrap and tee off on the first hole, the secondary market value drops to $150.
Or a new car. The tires hit the public street right outside the dealership, and boom, 25% of its value just instantly vaporizes.
Instantly. And if you're in a true liquidity crisis, where you are forced to sell your used electronics and your furniture on the internet just to make rent, you are going to get pennies on the dollar.
So true. It's garage sale pricing.
Which is exactly why this framework provides a ruthless, unapologetic definition of a real asset.
Okay, lay it on me.
In this philosophy, an asset is strictly something that puts cash flow into your pocket, whether you work or not.
Okay, so it has to produce income.
Right. It produces income, it appreciates in value, it has a ready market, and this is the crucial part. It does not require your physical presence to operate.
Because if I have to be there pulling the levers for it to generate money, it's not a business asset on my balance sheet, it's just a second job on my income statement.
Precisely. You didn't buy an asset, you bought a job.
Okay, so let's look at the mechanics of what actually qualifies under this really strict definition. What's on the list?
First, businesses that do not require your presence. You retain ownership, but they are managed or run by other people. Like we said, if you have to manage it daily, that's just a job.
Right, okay. What else?
Second is stocks. Third, bonds. Fourth, income-generating real estate.
Ah, I noticed the hyphenated word there. Income generating.
Yes, very important distinction. A piece of raw land that just sits there, costing you property taxes every single year without producing any crop yields or rental income. That is technically a liability in terms of cash flow until you actually sell it.
Wow, okay, that's a good point. It's bleeding you slowly.
Exactly. Fifth on the list is notes, which are essentially IOUs where you get to act as the bank and collect the interest.
Nice.
Sixth is royalties from intellectual property. So music catalogs, software scripts, patents, books.
Okay, and is there anything else?
The final category is basically a catch-all. It's anything else that has intrinsic value, produces income, appreciates, and has a ready liquid market.
That liquidity part feels super vital because, I might have this rare vintage comic book that appreciated in value, but if it takes me 3 years to find some niche collector who is willing to buy it at market price, it's not exactly helping me survive a sudden financial drought.
No, not at all. The liquidity and the cash flow, those are your lifelines. When the economy downsizes and massive layoffs hit, people who relied on that bloated net worth quickly discover a terrifying reality.
Yeah, that their stuff won't save them.
Right. Their so-called assets, their oversized primary residence, their luxury vehicles, their really expensive hobbies, they aren't feeding them. They are eating them alive.
Because all those things require constant maintenance, insurance, taxes.
Exactly. They're bleeding cash out of your pocket, which mathematically makes them liabilities, even though they're masquerading as assets.
So the mandate here is just to stop finding comfort in a high net worth on paper. Like, you have to audit your life today, look at the things you own, and recognize that your personal consumer goods are just dead capital.
Dead capital, exactly.
Your goal, if you truly want to mind your own business, is to start acquiring things from those true asset categories. Things that will act as this safety net of cash flow if your W-2 income suddenly vanishes.
That is the whole game.
Okay, but looking at that list, stocks, real estate, patents, businesses, it's incredibly broad. And I think this is where a lot of people just get paralyzed.
Oh, analysis paralysis is a huge hurdle.
Right. They know they need assets, but they have no idea which ones to pick. Like, I have friends who buy rental properties just because they read a blog post saying real estate is good, but they absolutely despise dealing with contractors and tenants.
Oh, man, which is just a recipe for catastrophic financial loss.
It really is.
Because choosing the right asset class is largely an exercise in self-awareness. It requires aligning your investments with your actual personal psychology and your genuine curiosities.
It's like finding what you're actually interested in.
Exactly. There's a very simple rule in this framework. If you don't love it, you won't take care of it.
That makes perfect mechanical sense. If you hate fixing toilets and negotiating with plumbers, your apartment building is going to fall into disrepair, your good tenants will leave, and your asset is going to hemorrhage money.
Right. The mindset required to successfully acquire and maintain assets is one of obsessive dedication and continuous lifelong learning. The people who make absolute fortunes in real estate, they love buildings.
Yeah, they're the ones looking at Zillow on a Friday night for fun.
Exactly. They love looking at land, analyzing zoning laws, and walking through open houses on their weekends. So when the inevitable friction occurs, a roof collapses or a pipe bursts, it doesn't break their spirit.
Right, because their foundational fascination with the asset class kind of carries them through the misery.
Exactly. And it's the exact same with the stock market. You see people blindly throwing money into index funds or, highly speculative tech stocks just because they think they're supposed to.
Because their buddy at work told them to.
Right. But if the market corrects and drops 20%, what do? They panic and sell at the absolute bottom. And they do that because they don't understand the underlying mechanics of the companies they own.
They have no conviction.
None. Now, compare that to someone who genuinely loves analyzing businesses. They read quarterly earnings reports for fun. They actually understand market cycles. So when the market drops 20%, they don't panic.
They see a sale.
Exactly. They see a discount and they buy more. And this ties into a really profound concept regarding risk. We are so often taught that investing is risky. But in reality, risk is simply a measure of ignorance.
Oh, that is brilliant. I love that. The less you know about what you are doing, the higher your risk profile.
Yes, the more you love a subject, the more you'll study it voluntarily.
Naturally.
And the more you study it, the deeper your mechanical understanding becomes. And the deeper your understanding, the lower your risk. You basically mitigate risk through applied knowledge.
So, assuming if someone has, done the soul searching, picked an asset class they are actually curious about, and started diverting their surplus paycheck into it, how do we actually manage the money once it crosses over to the balance sheet?
This is a huge transition.
Yeah, I want to pull on that thread about dollars acting as employees, because visualizing money this way, it completely changes how you interact with a bank account.
It really does. It is perhaps the most powerful mental model in the entire philosophy of wealth building.
So think of every single dollar bill that you manage to save and push into your asset column as a permanent, full-time employee.
A tiny little worker.
Exactly. And the incredible thing about a dollar employee is that it never gets tired. It doesn't need a lunch break. It doesn't ask for health insurance or paid time off. It just works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, compounding and generating more dollars for you.
It is the ultimate tireless workforce.
Uh-huh.
And this visualization, it leads directly to the strict rule of capital retention, which is essentially the cornerstone of generational wealth.
Okay, what's the rule?
The rule is, once a dollar goes into the asset column, it must never, ever come out. It becomes a permanent resident.
It's like the Hotel California for your money. You can check in, but you can never leave.
That is the exact mechanism. When you take a dollar out of your W-2 income and spend it on, say, a new television or a depreciating consumer good, that dollar is gone forever. It is a dead soldier. But when you put a dollar into an income-generating asset, it goes to work. And the dividends or the rental income that that dollar produces, those are the new children of your employees.
Wow.
And they immediately go to work for you too.
But wait, so if I pull a dollar out of my investment account just to buy a liability, I haven't just lost a dollar. I've literally fired an employee that could have worked for my family for the next 3 generations.
You are assassinating your best workers.
That's brutal.
But it's true. The wealthy understand that every dollar they save and invest is a seed that can grow into a massive self-sustaining forest. So the mandate is super clear. Do not fire your employees to buy a liability. Lock the door to the asset column and throw away the key.
Man, I hear that. And mathematically, obviously, I agree with it. But let's inject a little humanity into this, right?
Yeah.
Because we aren't robots. We want nice things. We want the nice car. We want the beautiful home. We want to go on a nice vacation.
Of course.
So if we are locking every single surplus dollar into the Hotel California of our asset column and never letting it out, when do we actually get to enjoy the fruits of our labor? Like, how do the wealthy actually buy their toys without breaking this rule of capital retention?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And the answer reveals the stark difference in the sequence of purchasing between the middle class and the wealthy. It's essentially a masterclass in delayed gratification and financial engineering.
Because it's not that wealthy people don't buy luxury cars. They buy plenty of them.
Oh, tons of them.
Right. So the difference is the mechanical timeline of how they are funded.
Exactly. Let's look at the standard middle class approach first. The middle class often buys luxuries first.
Okay.
They get a promotion at work, their W-2 income goes up, and they immediately want to project that new status to the world. So they go to a dealership and they buy a luxury car.
Yeah.
But how do they actually pay for it?
They finance it. They take out a huge car loan.
They buy it on credit. They're using their own sweat, their own blood, and their own future labor to finance a toy today. They are essentially mortgaging their future time on Earth just to look wealthy right now.
And mechanically, what happens next? Because now they have this massive monthly liability dragging down their income statement.
Right. The luxury quickly morphs into a financial burden. The debt causes this underlying psychological stress. And eventually, they might even grow to resent the beautiful car because every time they look at it in the driveway, it represents a chain around their neck.
Wow.
It demands a monthly payment that forces them to keep working a job they might hate just to stay afloat.
So how do the wealthy engineer this differently?
The wealthy build their asset column first, and they buy luxuries last. In this framework, a true luxury is not something you buy with your W-2 wages. A true luxury is a reward for developing a successful asset.
There's actually a brilliant concrete example of this from the material involving a Mercedes. Let's walk through the actual mechanics of how this transaction works, because I think it proves that you don't have to suppress your desire for nice things. You just have to redirect it.
Yes, the Mercedes story is perfect.
Mm.
So the scenario is this. A woman named Kim wants a brand new Mercedes. Now, she and her husband had plenty of cash flow from their daily operations.
They're doing well.
Right. They could have easily walked into the Mercedes dealership, put down a cash deposit, taken out a standard auto loan, and just driven the car home that afternoon.
Yeah.
That is the impulsive middle-class trap.
But she didn't do that. She utilized delayed gratification.
She waited 4 whole years. Instead of taking her surplus cash and handing it over to the Mercedes dealership, she took that money and invested it heavily into her real estate portfolio. She bought commercial apartment buildings. She steadily grew her asset column.
She was hiring more dollar employees and putting them to work in the real estate sector?
Yes. And she waited patiently until those specific apartment buildings were generating enough extra passive cash flow. And by extra, I mean net operating income after the mortgage, taxes, and maintenance on the buildings were already paid.
Okay, pure profit.
Right. She waited until that pure profit was enough to cover the entire monthly lease payment of the Mercedes.
That is just financial alchemy. Like, mechanically, she didn't buy the car. Her tenants bought the car.
Precisely. It didn't require a single extra hour of physical labor on her part to afford the monthly payment. Her employees, the dollars locked away in the real estate assets, they worked the night shift and did all the heavy lifting. They generated the passive profits that funded the luxury.
So the equation really isn't, I can't have the nice car. The equation is, who is paying for the nice car?
Exactly.
Are you dragging yourself out of bed at 6 in the morning to go to a job to make the car payment? Or are your asset employees paying for it while you sleep?
And when you engineer it that second way, the psychological relationship to the luxury completely changes. It isn't a source of stress or a debt trap anymore. It becomes a physical monument to your financial intelligence.
That's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, every time you grip the steering wheel, it is a reward that proves you successfully expanded your asset column.
The mechanical takeaway here is incredibly actionable for anyone listening. The next time you feel a burning desire for a luxury item like a watch, a vacation, a car, do not suppress it. Use it as entrepreneurial fuel.
Yes, channel that energy.
Right. Instead of reaching for your credit card and binding your future labor, ask yourself a completely different question. How can I acquire a specific asset that will eventually generate the cash flow to buy this luxury for me?
It just shifts your brain's default setting from I can't afford it to how can I afford it? Yeah. It turns a consumer impulse into an engine for wealth creation.
Which really brings us to the ultimate kind of existential question of this entire deep dive.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so we are working our day jobs, we are keeping our living expenses reasonable, we are diligently buying assets we actually understand, and we are using the surplus cash flow from those assets to occasionally buy luxuries. But how do we know when the game is won?
The finish line.
Yeah. If we reject the traditional bloated net worth calculation from the bank, how do we mathematically measure true wealth? Is there an actual finish line?
This is perhaps the most profound paradigm shift in the entire philosophy of minding your own business. Because, we are culturally conditioned to view wealth as this static, arbitrary number.
Like, I'll be rich when I have $1 million in the bank.
Exactly. But this framework rejects that entirely.
Right.
Instead, it adopts the definition of wealth created by R. Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, I love that we're pulling in Buckminster Fuller here. For those who don't know, he was this brilliant 20th century architect, systems theorist, and inventor. He popularized the concept of spaceship Earth.
Yeah, he was a genius.
He thought about systems holistically. So how did a systems theorist define personal wealth?
Well, Fuller realized that measuring wealth in static dollars is deeply flawed because it ignores the burn rate of living.
Okay.
Instead, he defined wealth not in terms of currency, but in terms of time. His exact definition was, wealth is a person's ability to survive so many number of days forward.
Survivability measured in days, that is wild.
Put another way, if you stopped working today, if your W-2 income dropped to zero immediately, how long could you physically survive and maintain your standard of living before you literally ran out of money?
That completely removes all the illusion of the bank's net worth statement. Having a garage full of depreciating jet skis and a closet full of expensive shoes doesn't help you survive days forward because they don't produce cash to buy groceries.
Exactly. Fuller's definition creates an incredibly precise, active measurement of financial independence. Sure. It is the exact mathematical ratio of the passive cash flow from your asset column compared directly to your monthly expense column.
Let's run the actual math on this to make it crystal clear for everyone. Let's say I sit down audit my life, and realize my baseline monthly living expenses. My rent, my groceries, my insurance, my utilities, they total exactly $2,000 a month.
Okay, so your burn rate is $2,000 a month.
hmm
Now let's look at your balance sheet. Let's say you've been diligently building your asset column.
Okay.
You own some dividend-paying stocks, maybe a fractional share of a commercial property, and those assets are generating $1,000 a month in passive mailbox money.
Okay, so I have 2,000 going out and 1,000 coming in automatically.
Right. Using Fuller's systemic definition, how wealthy are you? Well, assuming a standard 30-day month, your assets provide enough cash flow to cover exactly half of a month.
Right.
Therefore, your wealth is exactly 15 days. You can survive 15 days forward into the future without trading your time for labor.
I'm 50% of the way to the finish line.
But here is where the magic happens. The moment you continue to invest and your asset column grows to the point where it generates exactly $2,000 a month in passive cash flow, you cross a monumental threshold.
Because it matches.
Yes. Your passive income now perfectly matches your monthly expenses.
So my wealth number is no longer 15 days. It's infinity.
At that exact moment, according to this definition, you are officially mathematically wealthy. You are financially independent. You might not be a billionaire, you might not be flying on a private jet or living in a mega mansion, but you have entirely decoupled your survival from a wage. You have bought your own freedom.
This changes the entire game of personal finance. It's not about chasing a phantom $1 million. It's a highly personalized dynamic equation. And what I really love about this equation is that there are two separate levers you can pull to reach infinity.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, yes, you can work tirelessly to increase the cash flow from your assets, but you can also attack the other side of the ratio.
You can decrease your monthly expenses.
Exactly. If I look at my life and manage to cut my monthly burn rate from $2,000 down to $1,500, maybe I move to a cheaper apartment, or, I finally get rid of a car payment, I literally require fewer assets to become fully independent.
It's so empowering.
I pull the finish line closer to me just by living leaner.
It gives you immense control over your own financial destiny. And once you cross that threshold of infinity, where your passive income exceeds your living expenses, the mathematics of wealth truly take off.
Because of the surplus.
Yes, because now you take that surplus passive cash flow and you just reinvest it directly back into the asset column.
So your dollar employees are now giving birth to new dollar employees entirely on their own, without any new W-2 capital from you.
The assets grow, the cash flow expands, and your wealth begins to compound automatically. You have successfully built a machine that operates completely independently of your physical labor.
Okay. We have covered an incredible amount of mechanical ground today. Let's synthesize this entire philosophy. What is the soul of this concept? What does it truly mean to mind your own business?
To bring all these systems together, minding your own business is not about, starting a little Etsy shop on the weekends just to have some extra spending money.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It is a fundamental rewiring of your economic purpose. It demands that you recognize your profession, your W-2 job, for what it actually is. A temporary mechanism to keep you fed today and provide seed capital.
You garden you're tending for someone else.
Exactly. But your business, your meticulously curated, fiercely protected column of income-producing assets, is the only mechanism that can actually buy your freedom for tomorrow.
You have to stop acquiring liabilities that just masquerade as assets. You have to stop finding comfort in a bloated net worth statement built on consumer goods.
You must view every dollar you keep as a tireless worker. And true wealth is simply the math of those workers generating enough passive cash flow to exceed your cost of living.
When your survivability stretches into infinity.
Exactly. When you reach infinity, you have finally stopped minding everyone else's business, and you have successfully minded your own.
Now that we understand the mechanics of building an asset column and minding our own business, you might start wondering how the rules of the larger economic game are drastically tilted in favor of those who actually do this.
Oh, they definitely are.
Right. So next time, we are going to explore the fascinating history of taxes. We'll look at how the tax code mechanically treats the wage earner versus the business owner, and how the wealthy legally use the power of corporate structures to protect the exact wealth we just learned how to build.
It is the necessary next step. Because once you learn the mechanics of making the money and turning it into assets, you have to learn the mechanics of protecting it from the biggest gravitational pull on your wealth, the tax system.
But until then, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. We talked extensively today about how the traditional educational system trains us to be exceptional employees, how it trains us to mind someone else's business. We talked about planting a beautiful garden in someone else's yard.
Right.
But think deeply about the people who originally designed that educational infrastructure. The massive industrialists of the early 20th century, they didn't need a nation of independent, financially literate business owners.
No, they didn't.
They needed a compliant, specialized workforce to run their factories and buy their products. When you look at the systemic financial struggles of the modern middle class trapped in a cycle of W-2 income and consumer debt, you have to ask yourself, is this a glitch in the system? Or is the system operating exactly perfectly as intended? Keep tending your own garden, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.